somebody.
Yeah, it's after 6.
I thought I had 5:59.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'd like to call this meeting to order. Begin with the flag salute. Before we get started with the board meeting, I just have a quick announcement from Jeff.
Good evening. Just so you guys know, we do have a little bit of a change this evening with the amount of documents that we're printing out. One of the changes we've been trying to do is to get our board documents online. And so on our website, on the upper right-hand side of our website is a link to board docs. From there, you can view tonight's agenda. If you do not have a device with you, Renee does have 5 older iPads available if you would like to follow the agenda.
Okay, so we'd like to begin with our first item, Classified Employee of the Month for February. And our classified employee is Rochelle Chu from Lincoln Elementary. Oh, could you come up, please? Could you come up to the front of the room? Okay, Rochelle, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to read some lovely things about you that are said by your colleagues. I'm so sorry. And then you can just stand by the podium. And then other people are going to have an opportunity to say something about you. And then we'll have some things for you. And then if you would like to introduce anyone or say something, you'll have that opportunity as well. Okay. So, and these comments are from the staff of Lincoln Elementary School. She is dedicated. She bends over backwards to get things done for Lincoln. Rochelle goes far above and beyond to do her job and more, all the while spreading encouragement, positivity, as well as clear and helpful communication. Rochelle goes beyond all expectations. She is always looking for efficient ways to keep the staff organized with scheduling, disaster prep, and coordinating volunteers. Rochelle always has a smile on her face. Her positive attitude spreads to those around her and is always willing to lend a hand or a sympathetic ear. We are so fortunate to have Rochelle as part of our staff, as well as an active parent in our Lincoln community. Rochelle works her heart out for Lincoln. She is flexible, she is enthusiastic, she makes us all feel supported. She will do whatever needs to be done to support our teachers and school. She works very hard, very detailed about our disaster drill, always available to answer questions. Rochelle goes above and beyond all requirements. She is so organized and so helpful when the staff has questions. You really have to be amazingly detail-oriented to do this job, and she is wonderful. Without her, our fall festival would have been a dismal failure, and she always has a beautiful smile and a willing spirit. She is well organized and always maintains a positive attitude. She steps right into the tasks and delivers them with precision and accuracy. She smiles and exudes warmth to the staff and the children. She's also an involved PTA member at our school. Knowing how busy and dedicated she is to Lincoln makes for one amazing person. Just have a couple more. We are so you deserve it. We are so fortunate to have Rochelle Chu as our SOP coordinator. She works well beyond her paid hours, arriving early, staying late, and answering emails from home. As an active, dedicated parent volunteer and a PTA board member, Rochelle is always at school filling in any roles that need to be met, regardless of whether or not it is related to her position. Rochelle greets everyone in the office with a welcome smile and a contagious laughter. She responds to emails quickly and assists the teachers and staff in any way she can. She is a joy to have at Lincoln. Rochelle has been an important addition to Lincoln School. She helps keep our campus and students safe. She also helps to set up wonderful programs for our school and keep scheduled school-wide events running smoothly. Rochelle is a positive, hardworking, creative, organized, and kind-hearted staff member. She thinks outside the box to solve problems and is efficient. Not only is Rochelle a dedicated employee who establishes positive rapport with students, I'm just laughing because I don't want to hear myself talking so much, but this is amazing stuff. Okay, rapport with students and staff, but she is also Lincoln's PTA Executive Vice President. She cares so much about the Lincoln community that she spends her free time fundraising and creating memorable events for our school. Lincoln is a better place because of wonderful employees such as Rochelle. We cut this position entirely due to budget, and we were able to bring it back 50%. Rochelle is getting so much work done during the limited time that she has, plus putting in extra of her own time. She is truly amazing. She is also a Lincoln parent who volunteers countless hours for the PTA. And one last comment. Rochelle always has a positive response no matter how much she is put on her shoulders. She is appreciated by our staff for her willingness to learn, her hard work, and for taking an interest in each of us. She is a dual presence on our campus, a valued staff member, and a volunteer parent, putting in extra hours making our school great. In that role, she represents the community and the school and facilitates communication and cooperation among us. Thank you so much. Yes. So, Kristen would like to say something.
Yes, I really want to say something. I was very lucky. One of my kids had the same classroom with her son. And Rochelle and her husband really is Lincoln's asset. So I really appreciate your effort, both of you. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to say something? Okay.
I didn't realize we were such prolific writers, but I'll keep my notes short. Rochelle has been at Lincoln for a little over a year, and she has hit the ground running. She has immersed herself into projects such as CAS, test coordinating, disaster prep, things that make the rest of us kind of cringe a little on the inside, like, oh! And she has done it with style, with grace, with a smile on her face. She brings a certain lightness to the office, a great sense of humor. We are so fortunate in CUSD to have her, and especially here at Lincoln. She's really been an asset to our community, so thank you so much, Rochelle.
Thank you. And then Rochelle, would you like to say anything or introduce anyone?
Okay. Well, first I just want to say thank you. I'm very blessed. I've been a parent in CUSD for 10 years. I have a high school freshman now, and I have a first grader. And, you know, like Ann, our principal, just said, I'm at a loss for words. But it's just a great place to be, and it's a great environment, and I love supporting our staff and a wonderful principal. So I plan to be here, you know, as long as I can. So thank you very much. And there's my husband with the camera, and my son Logan, who's in first grade, and my daughter Haley. She's a freshman at Monte Vista right now. So thank you so much. I feel very blessed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh,
Oh, yes.
Hi, I'm Lisa Laguna. I'm the CSCA chapter president. You don't know me. But I want to thank you as well for all that you do. This is for you.
oh, thank you very much.
Congratulations, by the way, Employee of the Month. Again, thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very humbled.
Okay, our next item, 1.3, board agenda approval. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the agenda?
Just a slight change.
Yeah, Anjali?
Oh, it's just item number 7.4 4, it's just a typo there that needs to be adjusted, but we can do it at that
Oh, yeah,
time.
I'll mention that. Thank you. Okay, we'll mention that when we get to that one. Thank you. Okay, so we're good with the agenda. Item number 2.1, employee organizations. Do we have any comment from employee organizations? Okay. Okay. About 3.1, public comments not on the agenda?
Yeah, but that,
Wasn't that for 7.1?
was that for just now? For comments now?
Was it, or
employee? Yeah.
item on the agenda later? Oh, under 2, okay.
Okay.
Sorry. We missed.
So does that mean come up?
Yeah, you can just, yeah, Kai. No, Kai, just come up, please. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here tonight to express my hope that the board will support our efforts at the negotiation table to retain and attract highly qualified employees. Our employees have always been the heart of our district, but recently, as I go around and visit different schools, I hear more and more of them talking about moving to other districts. And this sentiment comes from a combination of stressful working conditions and, unfortunately, the lure of better compensation elsewhere. We need to revamp our formula for health and welfare. Just this year, our healthcare costs for the employees went from 25 to 30%. And this, coupled with no raise last year, meant that many of our employees, in essence, took a pay cut. Please, work with our negotiation teams to make Cupertino a place which draws new teachers and our veteran teachers want to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. I know them, yeah. Yeah. So Debbie Stoddard, I saw you earlier. Oh, yeah, there. Did you want to, is your comment not on the agenda, or is it on the agenda? Your, okay. Okay. Should we, do you want to tell Renee what your topic is, or?
It's teacher working conditions.
Yeah, so that's not on the agenda. Yeah,
Sure.
so you can speak now for 3 minutes, right? Do you have the timer, Renee? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Debbie Stoddard, and I'm a primary teacher in the district. I've been here 22 years. I live right around the corner, so I also live in the district. I want to talk tonight about being a primary teacher specifically and the workload that we now have. I teach with great integrity, and I feel strongly that I need to meet the needs of every student in my classroom. I'm organized and I'm super efficient, and my classroom is an academically rich place. It's safe, and it's a fun place for my kids to learn. But I find that I simply cannot continue to balance all that I have to do. The hours that I work are incredible, and I can't do the following things within my duty day any longer. I simply do not have time. The following are essential tasks that are done on my own time, and I can't eliminate them. Planning and prepping lessons, including designated ELD and PE, are done on my time. Vetting and differentiating curriculum is done on my time. Grading and evaluating student work is done on my time. Planning re-engagement lessons, my time. Grade level planning, my grade level team's time. Report cards, that's an 8 to 10 hour adventure 3 times a year that I do on I dedicate a weekend to that. I'm mentoring new teachers on my grade level. I meet with parents. I prepare interventions for my students. The paperwork for student success plans for the intervention strategy teams, IEP input, and input for student success team meetings, and data input. All of that does not fit in my duty day. So I don't want to come and just stand here and complain. So what can the district do, and what can the union do, and what can we do? And I know that these things cost money, but I give you so much. I give this district a lot. So perhaps primary teachers need the uninterrupted prep time like our upper grade and middle school teachers. Provide primary teachers, at a minimum, a half-day substitute for report card preparation. Provide an itinerant designated ELD teacher and enough ELD curriculum to last a year so we don't have to go find more to supplement what we have. This is the practice of surrounding districts. Eliminate the September or October Learning Day and reinstate the May Learning Day so that elementary school teachers can articulate classes for the following school year. We're having to give up our PD time and grade level time to articulate classes for next year. And finally, teachers need adequate pay to compensate them for the incredible effort and integrity with which we serve the children of this district. Thank you for listening.
So Kathleen and the DeVargas team, I think this is now also, right? Yeah. This isn't on the agenda, so you can speak now. And, Renee, you give them 3 minutes when they're ready. Yeah. You have 3 minutes when
Thank
you're
you.
ready. Okay.
Thank you, Board. We're very happy to be here. We're just here to represent DeVargas and I'm sure many other teachers. I'm just going to read a letter for a teacher who couldn't be here. It says, hello, Cupertino School Board. My name is Vanessa Holgen. I am a third grade teacher currently working at DeVargas Elementary School. Apologize for not being at this board meeting in person, but I felt it was necessary to speak out on the issue of teacher raises or lack of, as it does affect me directly. It is unbelievable to me that teachers have to fight for raises. We teachers are what builds our society. I love working in this district, mainly because I know this district so well. It was my district for elementary and middle school. The school that I currently teach at is the same elementary school I went to. How cool is that? I'm so invested in this district, but it seems that this district is not as invested in me. Refusing to increase the salary of teachers on a yearly basis is infuriating. I know what I bring to the table as a teacher, and I know if I cannot be compensated for that amount of work I do on and off the clock, I will be looking for a position in another district that can, and that saddens me to no end. I was so excited to finally move out of my parents' home into an apartment last year, but without even a cost of living raise this year, I may need to move to get another job on top of my teaching job to stay in my own place or move back in with my parents, and that doesn't seem fair. There are many years left ahead of my career, and I would like them to be in this district, the one I know and the one I love. Realistically, I need to think about my future and how much it costs to live and teach in the same area that I work. Silicon Valley is overpriced and teachers are way underpaid, so I need my workplace to notice me and to notice my needs. It makes me concerned I cannot afford to provide a life for myself in this district, especially with a career in education and working in one of the best districts in our state. I think that is truly pathetic. I hope I have been heard and you will recognize that I am not alone. Please think of us teachers every year as your first thought while securing a budget, and all other thoughts after us. We are the ones that carry the programs into the classrooms, all the expectations that you have, and the vision of the district into the classroom. Without us, this district couldn't exist. Please invest in us. Sincerely, Vanessa Holgen.
Hi, my name is Karen Lyon. I started out 27 years ago teaching preschool, and I've worked in a private religious school, and I have worked in preschools before. And the reason that I say this is because my point is it's not about the money, really, for me. I've worked in situations where I haven't been paid a lot of money. It's because I love what I do. I can't imagine doing anything else. I love the school that I'm at, and I hope I stay there for a long time. But I have some of the concerns that Vanessa has, but I'm not. The difference is I'm closer to the end of my career, and I would like to stay here. I love this area. As a transplant, I love living here, but I'm concerned that I'll be pushed out. And for me, what makes a difference is I don't have the second income. I live in a rent-controlled apartment. My car's paid off. My grad school loans are pretty low, and yet I still have to struggle. So I cannot imagine what it's like for young teachers like Vanessa. So it concerns me is that if I'm worried about living here and staying here, then younger teachers who could give as much as I have given or more can't stay here. And for me, that's a problem. I know you have budgetary concerns. I know how this works. But I also know that if you do want to keep quality teachers like we have in this room, you have to put the money in, and you have to make compensation something that is a deep consideration. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Jessica Lavoti. It's my first year in Cupertino Union. I've been teaching for about 6 years, and I'm an STC teacher, Mod Severe, at DeVargas. And I have transplanted here with my husband from New York to California because he's in tech. So I know the high cost of living because I grew up in New York City. And I came here, and I got a teaching job. And right away, I realized that clearly what I'm making here cannot cover the cost of living. Now, I am able to teach and live in the district that I teach in due to my husband being in tech. But I know as being at DeVargas with a bunch of young teachers or single income teachers, they commute hours to work. My staff in my classroom, the behavioral interventionists, commute about 2 hours every day because they can't live in the district in which they teach and work. And what kind of community is that when the children that we are serving, we cannot live in the same community that we teach in. And I just find that very unnerving because I grew up where you saw your teacher at the grocery store and you saw your teacher at the playground, yet very few of our teachers live in the community that they serve, and I find that very unfair and not right. And I already am being pulled to other districts with more competitive compensation, and it's only my first year. So it's hard for me to show up at work and see that and see my staff come into the classroom already exhausted from the long commute, and I just don't find that right or fair. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
So just to sum up our thoughts from DeVargas, we just want to let you know that, we feel like we all plan budgets in our own home. We know what that's like, what we do first. What we do first is our house payment. We secure that, we make sure we have that. And then we do our bills, our PG&E, and all those things that keep us surviving. And then on top of that, if we decide to do extra things, we might want to get a newer car or get a boat. Those are extras. But we secure what's important first. We need to feel like we're your most important. We're what you stand on. We're the legs you stand on. We want to be the first thing you consider, and you don't make any other decisions until after you secure us. And then if you bring in programs like technology, which you want to be a basic foundation for us, then you need to secure our tech crews and make sure that they're secure. And if you want to bring in, you have to think smart. I think smart with my budget. It doesn't feel like that in the past it's been thinking smart. You bring in all these extra programs and you're retraining us and we're carrying the weight of that into the classroom. That's great. But we don't have to have all those extras. We're really qualified. We could teach each other. We could strengthen each other on a lower budget. All these extra things you're doing, you're buying boats, you're buying extra homes. You're not really taking care of the foundation.
Kathleen,
Yes. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's all I really
We only
want to say.
submitted one card, but I think we gave 3 minutes each. But is that up now, Renee? Or
Oh, yeah.
okay, you can finish your thought. Yeah.
You know what my thought is. We just want the budget to work well like we plan our budgets. And we need you to show us how important we are. Because we don't feel important. And that's the feeling of our school. I don't know if it's all schools, but our DeVargas, that's how they feel. And I'm just here to represent them.
Thank you. Okay, so the rest of the public comments that are related to specific items, we'll call for those at the time of the item. So next, we're moving to our consent items. Do I have a motion?
I move items 4.1 through 4.9.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. So Renee, Anjali made the motion, Kristen second, and 4 people said aye. Phyllis is absent. Okay, number 5, information presentation. So number 5.1, Measure H Citizens Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. We have a presentation, Chris?
Yes, good evening. Before I introduce our presenter, I just wanted to, again, thank you to the community for supporting Measure H. Without Measure H, we would not have been able to do the amount of modernization out of our school sites. So tonight is our annual update to the board as a requirement of Proposition 39 type of bond. We have an obligation to report to the board as well as the community that we are spending the Measure H funds within the prescribed ballot measure. So tonight I'd like to introduce Mark Burns. Mark Burns is our chairperson for the CVOC, and Mark's going to give you a little update on the work that the committee has done this last year. So Mark.
Good evening. My name is Mark Burns. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, board members. And our presentation, we present an annual letter and a report, and you have that information. So I'll read our introductory letter for it. On June 5th, 2012, voters residing within the Cupertino Union School District demonstrated their confidence in the district by approving a $220 million general obligation bond measure, Measure H, under the rules established by Proposition 39. Voters approved the bond with a 66.16% affirmative vote. I'm pleased to present to you the 2016-2017 annual report of the Measure H Citizens Bond Oversight Committee covering the period of July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. The annual report is submitted to the Cupertino Union School District's Board of Education, this annual report, and local district residents by the Cupertino Union School District Measure H Citizens Bond Oversight Committee in fulfillment of its role as specified by law. The primary duties of the committee are to review bond expenditures to ensure the proceeds have been expended for the purposes set forth in Measure H, inform the public concerning the district's expenditures of bond proceeds, present to the district's governing board an annual report of the committee's proceedings and activities of the previous year, and provide a statement indicating whether the district is in compliance with bond requirements. Included in this annual report are highlights and status updates of projects that will prolong the life of the district's facilities and improve the learning experience of its students. During the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the district expended over $25 million on Measure H projects throughout the district. The bulk of these expenditures are related to major modernization and expansion efforts at DeVargas Elementary, Dilworth Elementary, Montclair Elementary, Stevens Creek Elementary, Stockholmeyer Elementary, Cupertino Middle School, Kennedy Middle School, and the property acquisition improvement at Sedgwick Elementary School. The Citizens Bond Oversight Committee met quarterly to review Measure H activities. At these meetings, district and program management staff provided the committee with written and oral reports and presentations. Based on its review, the committee has concluded that the district is in compliance with the requirements of Article 8A, Section 1B3 of the California Constitution. A full disclosure of the performance and financial audits can be viewed here. Oh, I could have read it that way. Respectfully submitted, Mark Burns, Citizen Bond Oversight Committee Chair. Thank you very much. I think if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to your committee for their work on this committee. So this is an information item, and we can ask any clarifying questions about this report, but we're not taking any action. We're just receiving the report from the committee. So does anyone have any clarifying questions for Mark? Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, the next item, 6.1, sorry, 6.2. Sorry, 6.2. Next.
5.2.
We have some new technology here.
It is
5.2 isn't showing up anymore on the board docs.
That's what it shows on mine.
It wasn't
shows on
showing
mine.
either.
It
No,
says
5.
next generation science standards.
No, that's 6.2. But I said 6.1.
No, 5.2.
No, 5.2.
Right, 5.1. So we have a different,
Then we have a different version over here.
yeah, that's not 5. Let's go to with what's currently on the board docs. Is that okay with the board members?
But I guess we have different board docs. That's okay, we can go, it's the science standards, right?
Jeff, what?
No, it's not actually.
So 5.1 we have, and the next item we have is 6.1. Is that what you have?
No.
So Kristen and Anjali have a different
But we have
agenda.
a
Can
next
you look
generation
at
science
why they
standards?
have a
Right.
different
Okay.
edition
Oh,
of the
ju-
agenda?
Just to clarify, so that's, bear
They're
with
saying
us,
they're
everyone, because
different,
this is
though.
new. Yeah, I understand that. So the way we have it on ours, just so we can line them up, and then we'll go in this order, but they're all posted. The only information item on ours is the presentation. For some reason, Next Generation Science Standards moved down to 6.2, but I believe that was an information item, is that right? Yeah, I'm just telling you what it is right here. So we should do Next Generation Science Standards because that was the intent, was for it to be information presentation.
Board docs are completely gone. Can you see?
And then, Chris, will you remind me?
No, because they wouldn't.
It's all right, but it's supposed to be up here. It's 5.9. Is the project delivery method, is that also an information or is that a discussion one? Right, so we'll hold off on that because we're still on the information
right.
presentation ones.
Which
And
is-
somehow it skipped out of being in information.
Which is
You
on
guys have
5.2.
two different things and I have nothing, so we're
So
going
if I may, Chris, just so
What
we
do
can
you
get
have?
settled here, budget update, is that
Oh,
a
you can log
discussion
in.
or information?
Discussion.
It's under discussion, right? Under information still, right?
Because it jumped, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So give me 1 second here. So, and then the first read is a discussion. So the only one that's out of order is this one. So we'll do the NGSS and then we'll be back in order. Okay?
Okay.
I'm not sure which number this is, but we're doing Next Generation Science Standards. 5.2? 5.2. Thank you, Hans and Mary.
We're going to hook up hardline because it doesn't want to connect. So. Just a moment.
If you go back here, yeah, or just refresh the screen and reopen it, it'll be in the right.
So they have the newest. I did go back and I still.
We'll go back in.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we all have the same now.
Yeah, we refreshed,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Is it possible to? Not all the way out the door, but yeah, that's good. Don't try to get out.
All right, well, good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Baker. It's our pleasure to present a little bit of information tonight about the Next Generation Science Standards. And we've had some work, we've been doing work on this pretty intensively for the last 2 years, and we're happy to offer this update to you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mary Enright. I'm the coordinator for science and math instruction. And we wanted to start with why do we need new standards for science? In 2008 was a very pivotal year in our world with the introduction of smartphones and the pervasive use of technology in everyday life. In 2012, the National Research Council established the framework and the vision to support education in a world that was becoming more scientifically complex. What they noted was that all students, not just the few that are drawn to science and mathematics, really need to possess sufficient knowledge and skills to engage in public discussion, to be careful consumers, and have the skills to learn about science outside of school. And additionally, we wanted students to have the skills to enter careers of their choice, which might be related to STEM, but not necessarily limited to those. So the next question is, how do we make science accessible for all students? First, we must connect all learning to what's going on in the real world. Through NGSS, we want science instruction to be driven by what is happening in the real world that we need to explain, or what problems in the world do we need to try to engineer solutions to. I want you to take a moment to engage in some real-world phenomenon as our students would. As you can see, exposure to phenomenon allows access for everyone where we can notice, we can wonder, and we can ask questions. It's the phenomenon plus the student-generated questions about what they see that guides our learning and teaching. Phenomenon or problems provide the curious, engaging context that gives students the authority to make sense of the world around them. It is no longer the teacher or the textbook telling students what they need to know. Instead, it's the student at the center of figuring things out. Another important aspect of NGSS is that solving problems and designing solutions is integrated into all of the science disciplines. Sometimes STEM activities that we see in outside clubs and camps focus on designing solutions with mechanical, electrical, or computer engineered solutions. NGSS integrates problem solving into the full breadth of scientific disciplines, from environmental science, chemical and materials engineering, as well as those traditional STEM fields. The problem you see above, how can we design a portable baby incubator that uses phase change to keep babies at a healthy temperature, is an example of an NGSS lesson in middle school where students can apply what they've learned to real-world problems. Exposing all students to a variety of applied scientists creates an increased access for students that are traditionally underrepresented in STEM fields, including girls, students of color, as well as students from all socioeconomic levels. So as we saw before, NGSS sits squarely around students making sense of the world. But to help students make sense, a very important dimension of the NGSS science standards is the science and engineering practices. As you see in this figure, students are in the center of figuring out what's going on. They begin by asking questions, drawing on the practices of science and engineering like models to explain, planning and carrying out investigations to gather data, or drawing on data from external sources like the NOAA or USGS to ultimately construct, to refine, and defend their own scientific explanations or their design solutions.
One of the other dimensions of NGSS is the cross-cutting concepts, and this is the most, to me, this is the most intriguing piece. It is exactly what it sounds like. So we're talking about a concept that transcends all areas of science. So you wouldn't necessarily talk specifically about physical or specifically about life or specifically about whatever branch of science you want to talk about. The cross-cutting concept literally is like a saw running through all of them, and it reinvents itself throughout. So these are the 7 that are really emphasized in the NGSS. I'm not going to read them all for you because I know you're all versed, but I'm going to highlight a couple of them. Obviously, cause and effect is one that we've all studied for many years. It's been a real underpinning of all science. And I think the difference now is we're not telling a student, well, if we do this, this is what's going to happen, right? It's more about, what if we do this? What do you think is going to happen? And what is your thinking around that? Another really intriguing model is the systems and system models. So we actually went to a PD recently and heard one of the developers of NGSS speak. It was an amazing experience. And you know, he really brought it home for me. This idea of systems was something I was grappling with. But you know, he really brought it home, and that he would say, you know, look, in science we're studying a system, and say your circulatory system. And within that system, each organ is its own system. So we might have the lungs, right, are a system, and the blood vessels are a system. Everything, it's all systems and subsystems, and it really helps me sort of organize my thoughts around that. We've talked quite a bit about this with our teachers, and these are things we really want them to highlight as they're going through their units. I don't know how many of you have seen this slide. But literally, as the intertwinings of a rope, the 3 dimensions of NGSS, so the cross-cutting concepts, and you see that everything is color coordinated. The disciplinary core ideas and the science and engineering practices are literally intertwined throughout whatever you're studying. in such a way that one depends on the other. So we're not going to isolate and talk about cross-cutting concepts. We're not going to isolate and talk about disciplinary core ideas. We're going to literally intertwine them. One of the biggest challenges for our teachers is looking at these standards. If you actually look at one of the standards, and Mary and I went back and forth about whether we should include that graphic or not, but if you have a chance, we decided against it. If you have a chance, look at them. They are extremely complex. Literally, each performance expectation, which is basically a standard, has 3 different areas that it's addressing, and it has many different ways in which you might look at it. And in that way, they're very complex, and it's done very intentionally that they're that complex so that we're integrating these 3 pieces in all of our lessons. So this is our best job at trying to sort of think about the 5E model. I don't know how many of you have thought about the 5E model or used it, but engage, explore, explain. Really, it's an iterative process that we're looking at. And at the core of the iterative process, of course, that is, hopefully everybody knows, recognizes that's an eclipse. It's actually a picture from the eclipse back in August. And that would be our core phenomenon. So at the core of this iterative process is the phenomenon. And then as we go through and students are able to grapple with what's going on, we might present more. We might have a sub-phenomena that we put in there as part of, okay, so this is what we're looking at. What does that mean? Now look at this piece. What does that mean? What do you think? Really having students a chance to develop their own meaning rather than us saying, so in an eclipse, what happens is that, and so forth. It's more about, gosh, this is interesting. What do you see? And what can we give you to help you make your own meaning around it? I think the other piece is that we want to highlight is the use of student notebooks, and Mary will get to a little bit about the glue in a minute, but students using notebooks in science, I remember being a science student myself, probably many of you in the same way, where the teacher would give notes and we would copy down what the notes were, and then we may refer back to those and whatnot, and really what we're talking about is more a dynamic notebook, where students are looking at phenomenon, having a chance to write down their thoughts, going back to that phenomenon. Have your thoughts changed? What do you think now? What's different than what you thought before? And in that way, it's that iterative process.
So as Hans was saying, NGSS really provides the glue to pull together many of our educational initiatives of the last few years. Beginning with the district's desire to promote 21st century skills like creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And then it was coupled with our foundational work with Common Core in English language arts and mathematics. And finally, NGSS provides that context to bring all these skills together to support our vision for our students. So a few of you have a handout, and there's some handouts at the table of just, we focused on the many primary shifts in NGSS, but there's a list of about, almost 20 of instructional shifts that we'd like to see more of in our classrooms and less of in our classrooms. It's part of the framework, and if you have a chance, you might take a look at those. And for those of you board members that are looking at them, if you have any questions that come up, please share those with us in a bit.
All right, so now we just want to take a moment and get you sort of caught up on, so where are we with an NGSS implementation? If you compare it to sort of that CCS timeline that we were on many years ago, it's very similar. We've been very intentional about what we're doing and trying to get as many folks involved on the ground level prior to having materials to start to really understand the complexity of the standards. And really our central idea, as you see, was how can you adapt, how can teachers adapt their existing lessons to be more NGSS aligned? And we've offered some after-school courses. We've had several summer institutes at this point for several days. And we've had, there's a lot of teachers that have come. Almost every middle school teacher has come. We've had about 10% of our elementary population has been to those. So we've really concentrated on trying to get them in the ground floor and thinking about, you have a lesson now, and what can we do to make that lesson more NGSS-like, or NGSS size, as I coined that phrase. We have our middle school and elementary school cadres, similar to the cadres that we had for language arts and for math. And they're doing similar work, and they're really going deeper than anyone else and engaging in a lot of this work on a much deeper level. I think our primary theme, though, again, is about how can we make your current lessons more NGSS-like and incorporating these components that we're talking about tonight. So we wanted to share with you a few of the important dates that are upcoming. The actual science test, so it used to be the Science CST, you might recall, is being updated, and it is now called the CAST, not to be confused with the CST, so the California Science Test. And it will be operational this spring, within the next month or two. And it's a field test, so we won't get any scores. Last year they did an item analysis, they did an item test, so they were testing items. This year they're actually giving a test, but they won't give us any results from it. There are blueprints available online. We've shared the blueprints with our cadres. They've seen those blueprints and had a chance to kind of dig into them a little bit. What's interesting about the test is we all know that the CSTs used to be really just, it was a bubble test and very factoid oriented, I think is the latest word. And this test is more about, here's a situation. Let's think through it scientifically, and what would you do? What do you think is happening? And what would you do if this was a situation that you encountered? Also importantly, coming up on this November instructional materials list, the official instructional materials list will be published by the state. And that's what we have for you, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hans and Mary and your team for the presentation. This is an information item, so we're just going to take clarifying questions. Anjali?
Yeah, just to follow up on you said it's the test of it. Is it all computer-based like CCSS? Or
Correct.
Is it,
It's all online.
online? Thank you.
Anyone else with a clarifying question on the presentation?
I just wondering, this test is only for 5th to 8th grade, so it's different from CASP.
Correct. So the science test is for 5th and 8th grade. There's an important difference. Previously, the CST, the 5th grade CST and the 8th grade CST really were only about 5th and 8th grade. This test actually incorporates 3rd through 5th grade standards in 5th grade, and then 6th through 8th grade standards in 8th grade.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anjali?
Can I do a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Is there one in the high school also?
11th grade. Actually, I think they get to choose. I think
It depends, yeah, but there's one in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's one in 11th grade in high school for CCSS also.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, just wondering, what's our time professional development for teachers? What kind of involvement would there be for teachers to be NGSS sized?
So we've talked a little bit about what we've done already, but obviously we haven't worked with the masses. And I think a lot of that is dependent on where we go as a district as far as choosing materials. And once we have materials, we can dig deeper into what that PD might look like. And at this point, we don't have a firm plan about that. So, but our PD that we're conducting, we do have one more cadre meeting with both elementary and middle school in May coming up. So we'll continue with that.
Yeah, and I would just add that we've known from our professional development experience with Common Core, for example, with middle school mathematics, or our work that we're doing with units of study, is that standard shifts that require large instructional changes in the classroom are best implemented with very professional, sustained professional development for our teachers, and continuing work with coaches.
So, middle school science teachers were not involved with other Common Core materials, so this would be brand new for them. But for elementary school teachers, they have had to deal with Common Core math, not deal with, do professional learning for Common Core math, and also writers workshop, a lot of other things. And then now they also need to learn science, NGSS.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have opportunities to leverage the work that elementary school teachers that have done, and also our 6th grade teachers, which commonly teach science and another discipline, typically language arts, mathematics as well. So we have some professional development that we can leverage, and there are a few science teachers, myself included, that when Common Core was first introduced, we were involved in particularly reading and writing in the ELA standards with the focus on more nonfiction reading and kind of argumentation in reading and writing. Claim, evidence, reasoning is a standard piece that you see threaded through ELA as well as science.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have for now. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to the discussion section. Are we all? Okay, item 6, we all have the same agenda now. Okay, so 6.1, project delivery methods for construction projects. I believe we have a presentation, and just to remind everyone, this is a follow-up discussion that we started last time. So, Chris?
Good evening, Board President, members of the Board. Dr. Baker, as you recall, I presented last month an introduction to some project delivery methods with emphasis on design bid build versus lease-leaseback. We had a nice discussion on that. We wanted to take it a step further and bring in legal counsel to expound on that a little bit and talk about the legal implications and the legal requirements if we were to choose, if the board were so inclined to choose lease-leaseback as a project delivery method. With that, we've invited Reed Shannon, who snuck around the back here, with Dana Swolver and Kelly, and he can present to you and we can answer any questions you may have afterwards.
As Travis said, my name is Reed Shannon from Dana Swolver Kelly. I'm in the business, property, and construction group, which means that we help schools with facility projects. I want to thank Travis and Chris for inviting me to give this presentation, and the board for listening. Let's see, how do I? There we go. So I'm going to talk about 4 topics. The first is a review, which I understand will build on what was covered at the January 9th meeting of what is lease-leaseback contracting. The second are those legal developments. That will be recent court decisions as well as some statutory changes. We'll talk about adopting a best value methodology, and that will really be the focus of tonight. That's a necessary first step for any school district that's interested in using a lease-leaseback contracting for its facilities projects. And then finally, we'll do some comparison against design bid build, which is your traditional procurement method whereby a contract is awarded to the lowest bidder. And most importantly, I just want to make sure that I answer any questions you have. So for our review, what is lease-leaseback? Under this type of project delivery method, the district leases land that it owns, a school site, to a developer, which is our general contractor, or sometimes called our prime contractor. That can be done by statute for a de minimis amount, $1. The developer then constructs what we call tenant improvements to the property. So that's your new facility or your modernization of an existing facility, and then leases those improvements or facility back to the district. During this lease structure, the district retains title to the site, the land that it owns, the whole time. The district gets title to the facility or the improvement upon making its final lease payment, at which point both of the leases expire. So the district retains title to the land the whole time, gets title to the constructed facility at the end of the lease. So what are the legal implications of that? Well, we have 3 different Court of Appeals decisions that have resulted in a split in California law. These are the major cases, and I just want to note that they address the prior version of the lease-leaseback statute, which is Education Code 17406, not the current version, which I'll discuss in a minute, and we'll see why that's important. Our first is Davis v. Fresno. You've probably heard of this decision. It came out of the 5th District, and in that case, a taxpayer challenged that a school construction contract should have been competitively bid, right? That's the design, bid, build, low bid method. That's our traditional method. The trial court said no, it's okay because they used leaseback contracting. But the Court of Appeal reversed, and they said in this case, the taxpayer, which was challenging the procurement method, had adequately alleged that the contract didn't meet the leaseback statute. And the reason why is they said that it's possible that it wasn't a genuine lease. And the Davis court said we'll look to two things as our factors for whether or not something's a genuine lease. The first is that there should be a financing component, and so that goes to the timing of the payment. And the second is that at the end of the construction, there should be a time period which the district is using the constructed facility under the lease. What those two things essentially mean is that the Court of Appeal wanted to make sure that this was something different than just a traditional construction contract, that it was a genuine leaseback contract arrangement, which brings us to our second case, McGee, where the 2nd District disagreed entirely. So this case involved the Torrance Unified School District. It's again a taxpayer challenge to a contract where they said this should have been competitively bid because while it's using a leaseback contract method, it's not a true lease. The McGee court rejected the Davis analysis and said that those requirements aren't statutory, that the idea of having genuine financing and this occupancy period during the end of the lease aren't things that are found in the plain language of our statute, which is Education Code 17406, so the court can't engraft those on and thereby require school districts to follow them. Our final case, or at least our final case to date, is Tabor. This came out of the 1st District. It involved Mount Diablo, a unified school district. It was again a taxpayer challenge. You're probably seeing a theme here too. The leaseback contract saying it should have been competitively procured via low bid procurement. This court sided with McGee, which means that it said that those additional requirements aren't grounded in the statute. It's not going to investigate whether or not there's genuine financing or whether there's actual occupancy at the end of the lease term. It's just going to look to the language of Education Code 17406. Cupertino Union School District is in the 6th Appellate District, but we can't actually read too much into that. First, that appellate district hasn't decided one of these cases, and then secondarily, in California, there's no horizontal stare decisis, which means that a trial court could apply any of these 3 decisions. So, that split isn't predictive of what a court in this area would do. The final thing I want to note about these cases is that all 3 of them agreed on another point that you may hear discussed, which deals with conflicts of interest. And that meant that an independent contractor that was providing pre-construction services related to the design of the project that was going to be constructed under leaseback contracting could arguably be in a conflict of interest if they later contracted with the district for the construction of the site. They could be considered an employee of the district even though they're just an independent contractor for the purpose of Government Code Section 1090, at least in a civil case, probably not in a criminal case. But now things have changed, and that brings us to the legislative legal development. AB 2316, which I understand was covered at the last meeting, changed Education Code 17406. It amended it and created some new requirements. It was effective January 2017. I know the Tabor case, which was the last one we discussed, was in 2017, but that was applying the law that was in effect at the time that contract was entered. So there's a bit of a lag that occurs here. So the first thing that AB 2316 changed is that now there's competitive selection, which wasn't required before and which was sort of the central dispute in all of those 3 cases. And so it is possible that this is a legislative solution that resolves those taxpayer challenges. The second thing, which is what I was just discussing, the conflict of interest solution, is that it allows pre-construction services to occur under the same contract with some restrictions. So what that means is if you have a developer that's going to construct a contract, you can bring them in prior to approval of the plans and specifications by the Division of the State Architect, which is necessary for all of our school construction so long as no actual construction activities for which a contractor's license would be required occur until after you have DSA approval. So the reason why that's important is if you only have one contract, you don't have the conflict of interest of someone that has an interest in the first contract advising the district to go forward with the second contract. It added subcontractor bidding, which wasn't required before. So for unlisted subcontractors with subcontracts over 0.5% of the total contract value, those need to be awarded through an open process. It's either low bid or it's best value. And then finally, the board has to make findings in support of the award. Those have to be publicly announced at a board meeting like tonight's. There has to be a written statement identifying the basis for the award that satisfies an external audit. Why is that required? Well, it goes back to the competitive selection requirement to ensure that this contracting is being done fairly. So if you have to have competitive selection, you need to do it through a best value methodology. And this is the amended statute under AB 2316 that we've been talking about. I'm not going to read the language to you, but you can see that it requires a best value. So what does best value mean? That's different than just the lowest bidder. Best value is the best combination of price and value as defined by the district. And then, the best value criteria that you're going to be deciding on, it has to be public and transparent. And so the board is going to adopt and publish procedures and guidelines that would facilitate that for any school district that wants to use lease-leaseback contracting. The statute goes on to define a number of elements that are required in a best value methodology. The first is a request for proposal process, which I'm sure is familiar. You have to include certain information that's set forth in the statute in your request for proposal for a developer. So those are an estimated price of the project, whether you're having pre-construction services, the developer is assisting in the design of the project, and to what extent, the key terms of the contract, or you're attaching the contract, the requirements to submit a proposal, and how you're going to be evaluating the proposal, which are the best value criteria and the weight that are applied to them. The request for proposals gets advertised. There's specific advertising requirements once a week for 2 weeks in a newspaper and trade paper. Anything else is just a bonus. For instance, if it was posted on a website, that's nice, but it's not statutory compliance. You need to make sure it's publicly advertised. There's a pre-qualification requirement. So pre-qualification is governed by Public Contract Code 20111.6. And anyone that wants to propose for a lease-leaseback project has to have gone through this project. So any prime contractor needs to be pre-qualified, and pre-qualification occurs through a board-adopted pre-qualification questionnaire that asks contractors a series of questions intended to suss out their experience and suitability for the project, and then a rating system, which is the way that you'll evaluate those contractors. The pre-qualification for lease-leaseback contracts should occur on an annually or quarterly basis. That's important because it means it's not per project. Rather, it's open for a period of time that anyone can submit, and then there's specific deadlines that you have to follow. The application has to be submitted more than 10 business days before the time for the request for proposals closes, and the prime contractor developer has to be pre-qualified 5 business days beforehand. So that kind of sets up your process for how you're going to get proposals, but then you need to evaluate those proposals, and that's through a criteria and rating system that determines what is best value to the school district. So again, the statute says certain things are required. You have to consider price, you have to consider relevant experience, you have to consider safety, but other than that, there's a good deal of flexibility. You can add any criteria that you want, you can adjust the weight, there's no points that are specified, you can make criteria pass-fail. Whatever's best for the types of projects that you're envisioning, you apply that criteria to the proposals, you score and rank them, and then highest ranked is the best value, the best combination of price and value. So in the board packet, I understand that there's a sample best value resolution. Probably no one can read this, but what it says essentially on the left side, are the types of actions that go with adopting a best value resolution. And I guess I should note it can be done by a board policy. Instead, it doesn't have to be a resolution. What's important is that it's adopted and it's open and transparent. And governing, so section 2, would say that a school district has determined that it's in their best interest to use lease-back contracting to make it available. It's not project specific, it just means you want that to be another tool in your toolkit. You determine that your best value methodology complies with the Education Code statute, which means it includes everything that we've just discussed up until now, and then you'd authorize the use of it in future procurement. So it would be included in a request proposal so that potential contractors knew this is how we're going to be scored. On the right, we have what is a sample rating system. And so you can see I didn't actually create this, but what's included in there are those required criteria we discussed, which are price, relevant, experience, and safety, and then some additional sample criteria, which could be taken out, adjusted. The points could be adjusted. Things can be pass, fail. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility to the statute. The point is that it's a fair and transparent way to evaluate contractors depending on what matters to a particular school district. So that brings us to the final point, which are the comparison against the traditional design bid build. So the first advantage is what we've just been talking about. It's best value selection. It means that you're not just awarding projects based on the lowest bidder. You're considering things like relevant experience, who's best to truly construct, modernize, or improve the facility, which means that you're looking at qualifications and actual success on past projects. You can have a certain level of cost control if there's two ways that you can have price proposals in lease-back contracting. You can either do a lump sum or you can do a fee for service, which means that the developer is adding their fee for constructing on top. So it can be either a percentage like 5% or a certain amount that they're adding on top of the price of the construction. When you do a fee for service, the guaranteed maximum price for the contract will be negotiated through an open book process. That means that the developer is going to show the district all of the various costs to construct the project. It would be reviewed in a negotiation. Additionally, there's some level of cost control because the developer is brought in at an earlier stage through those pre-construction services, which means that they would be engaging in things like constructability review to make sure that the plans can actually be built in a way that's efficient in value engineering to find ways to get cost savings. So that can reduce the cost. It can also mean that it reduces change orders down the line because those things like scope gaps are discovered. Also, the contract kind of sets a cleaner process for change orders. You agree what the margins will be on those change orders up front. So the point is getting the developer in early should give more predictable costs and avoid expensive change or reduce, I shouldn't say avoid, expensive change orders down the road. Similar with schedule control. The schedule is part of the guaranteed maximum price negotiation, so the schedule would be approved by the board, and all of this results theoretically in a less contentious relationship with the developer. Since they're brought in early, they're seeing the plans and their input is being considered in the plans. It should avoid unforeseen conditions, or at least you've set up a clear procedure for evaluating unforeseen conditions with a defined contingency, the amount of the contingency, et cetera. The challenges or disadvantages. The first is this skilled and trained workforce requirements, which those are established by SB 693 and SB 418 to apply to lease-back contracts. So what that means is that there are apprenticeship graduation requirements that apply to the work that is performed on the construction project. It can either be the number of workers or the hours of work, and that a certain percentage of those number of workers or hours of work must be skilled journey persons who have graduated from an apprenticeship program that is approved. That means that you have to have a certification process, generally a monthly certification process, which is theoretically another administrative hurdle to lease-back contracting. There can be higher upfront costs because it's not low bid, so the price may be higher upfront, but as we've discussed, the theory is that you should have less expensive change orders down the line because that constructability review has occurred. And then finally, there is a potential for legal challenges. We talked about those 3 cases, Davis, McGee, and Tabor. Those probably aren't the end of the saga, even though the law has changed. And AB 2396 is still itself relatively new. It's only been in effect since January 1st, 2017. So there's still potential for that. One solution is to use a validation action, which is a statutory procedure. It says if you are contesting this contract, come forth and do it now. If it's not contested after a certain period of time, it should be legally insulated from challenge. So that is the talking points I had, but I'd love to answer any questions.
Reed, thank you very much for the presentation. This is a discussion item, but before we get to your questions, I just want to remind my fellow board members, we have a long agenda tonight of a lot of items, and we have discussed this item before. And so we will have a discussion, but if the only thing we really need to decide is we've all seen the resolution in the presentation, that if we were willing to bring the resolution back to the next meeting, and it would just add this as something to our toolkit, but design, bid, build is not going away. I appreciate the slides on the advantages, but this would just add this as another thing to our toolkit. So we want to get through our questions quickly and see if we're willing to bring back the resolution next week, then we can move on to the other items. Okay, Anjali?
Just a clarification, you said you could add the validation, that would be part of the resolution? Or would that be outside of it?
Sorry, so no, it wouldn't be part of the resolution. The resolution would be general, saying that it's in the best interest of the district to have lease-back contracting available. And a validation action would be specific to one project, one contract. So you would say, we've entered this contract with this developer, and we're going to file an action to essentially invite challenge. If anyone is challenging this particular contract, come forward or do it now. If you don't, then it should be insulated from challenge down the road.
So it's fair to say it would be, like, every time this method is used, validation could be a step that would be followed.
It could be, it's an option, it's not required.
Right. And then you just, in that validation, you're kind of giving anybody who wants to object 5 days or whatever the number of days is to come and object, or is it number of days, or is it?
Essentially, just to be crystal clear in case I haven't explained this, what would be happening is that the district would be filing a legal action in a superior court against all persons interested. Then there would be a published notice in the newspaper, and people that wanted to challenge or contest the contract could then file an answer in court. It's not a public hearing. I mean, it's a public process in the sense that it plays out in the court system, but it's different than a meeting like tonight.
So how long does it take for that validation to play out?
Well, it would depend on whether or not there was a challenge. Assuming that there was no challenge, that the contract was legitimately procured through lease-back project delivery, probably a couple of weeks.
So it's fair to say if you follow that step, you're hoping that you won't have the lawsuits afterwards.
Yes, that's the intent. Or if they occur, that you would say these lawsuits have been precluded, and thus, the issues that are the basis for the challenge shouldn't be decided by the court.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
So I'm trying to grasp the lease and lease back concept. So we are leasing the school site to the contractor to do improvement, and then they will lease it back after it's finished. In case one of us needs to break the contract, would that be different from the design bid and build, since we have leased the school site out?
Well, it would be different in the sense that that lease procedure obviously doesn't occur in design bid build, but the title to the school site always remains with the district. It's only the improvements that are being constructed by the contractor that are being leased back to the district. So, in the event of a termination, both leases should be canceled out, and school site still with the district. The contractor has whatever financial interest it has in the improvements that it constructed.
So for example, so we will have better contractor that has to go through the qualification, but just in case maybe the contract goes bankrupt, or turns out that the qualification didn't pan out, what is there anything that could protect us?
So in those situations, there really shouldn't be a difference. The protection for a situation of a contractor going bankrupt or abandoning the project is that in both the lease-leaseback contract and in your standard design bid build contract, if it's above a certain amount, 25,000, a performance bond is required. And the performance bond is guaranteed by a surety up to 100% of the contract price, and they would be required to complete the project.
So can we also set a deadline that they need to finish the project by this time? If they don't finish, we can have a fine. That can be part of the contract.
That's exactly right. That's the way it works. Contract has a certain contract time, a number of days that it must be completed in, after which point liquidated damages, as Travis was saying, would kick in, and those are a fine that the district could collect for delay.
Kristen?
I just have a quick question. So from the audit perspective, does that, for the two different way, does that have any difference from the audit procedure?
I'm sorry, I didn't
rephrase that.
So,
Yeah.
so for example, like our external CPA, when they audit our book and the project, does that make any difference no matter we choose lease-leaseback versus the design bid build?
You know, that's a novel question that I haven't dealt with before, and I don't want to speak to how your CPA would do the audit. I think that may be something
maybe
we'd have
Chris
to
can
come
answer
back.
that one.
Maybe Chris can answer that.
Excuse me. As I understand the question is that will our third-party independent auditor that audits our financials, will they have any ability to weigh in on whether or not we're following the process? I would say possibly, because our same auditor is responsible for making sure that the Measure H funds are being spent accordingly. There is a performance audit that they do as well to make sure that everything is kind of in line. So I would say yes. I think there would be some ability for our financial auditor to make sure that we're following the lease-leaseback protocol.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this isn't a voting item, but are fellow board members okay with bringing the resolution back then next time? Or you have another question?
Yeah, since
Okay.
the attorney is here, I'd like to clarify about the court cases. And so thank you. You were clear that for our 6th district circuit court, that it hasn't been a case. I just want to understand, usually why would people bring a case, a lawsuit against a case lease-back, so that we might try and avoid it?
I can't really speak to the motives. I guess there could be two likely reasons. One is the taxpayers could feel that it's possible that low bid contracting is a better use of tax dollars. The other, probably more likely reason, is that a contractor that was dissatisfied with the result, that it was not selected as the best value, could challenge it just in the same way that a bid protest could occur under traditional design bid build contract. And just one caveat, although I did say the 6th district hadn't decided this issue, that doesn't really matter because the local court could apply any of those three opinions regardless. There's no horizontal stare decisis, so they can follow any of them.
So can they bring back the resolution next time, or?
A question on that.
Yeah.
The resolution that's shared is actually a sample. It's not exactly how it's going to be. So
Right.
what you bring back, would it be again that we'll get to see it once and then vote the following time?
Yeah, we can do that. I think
Okay.
that's probably the best way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the next board meeting, you'll bring the actual resolution.
So just to clarify, so what's attached to the agenda is the draft. We are hoping to get any further comments on this existing draft so that we could bring it back. So if the language as written in the draft is sufficient for the board's interest, we'd like to bring this back without the draft watermark on there for the board's possible consideration to approve at the next meeting. But if the board would like us another meeting to fully read the.
Yeah, so Anjali, when you mentioned the sample, are you talking about the one in the presentation? Because the
No,
draft
I'm
is
looking-
the,
No, but when you look at the draft itself, it says on page, on the exhibit A2, it says, these criteria, samples only adjust per the district's preference, and there's comments by DWK, and there's, so I think just because it's not something that we need to rush into voting in the next time, or is it fine to just get exactly what, you can take off the word draft, but as we have always practiced that, we bring something to a meeting and then we vote on it. It can even go into consent the following time, but we don't just have, we have the real resolution.
So what I hear Chris saying, though, is that actually what is presented here is what we would bring back. So yes, taking off the draft and any notes and things like that, but the content would not change. That's what you're saying, Chris, right? So yes, we can still do that, but the point is that it would help us that if there's anything in this draft, if there were comment about what you would want to see different, because otherwise we're not going to go and do anything different. We're going to bring back the exact same thing except for taking off draft.
So then I would have a question for you. So even though it says adjust to district criteria, this is district criteria?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was edited for our purpose from
Not the sample.
From a sample, yeah.
Okay, because it doesn't reflect that. It reflects like it still needs to be edited.
So I think what we would do then next time is we'll just bring it as a clean copy. Why don't we put it on discussion/action?
Correct.
Maybe you'll feel comfortable passing it then. If not, we'll bring it back another time.
So, I understand that we will also need the best value methodology, so that will be part of the resolution. That should be approved by the board, right? He mentioned that's part of the resolution, and also the qualification requirement. Would that be another thing? He said that also should be approved. And also, are we on a timeline? Do we need this so that we have some project in the summer because it takes time for people to apply, get qualified, and then I don't know if you have a timeline.
Thank you for the question. So let me address the question about the pre-qualification. So the district the board in the past has adopted an approved pre-qualification process for all contractors. So we would continue to use the same pre-qualification process that we've used to vet all of our contractors. And then the second question you had around timeline. It is important to understand if there is a particular timeline, if this is a tool that we want to have in the toolbox, and if we want to take advantage of this tool for the purposes of this coming summer's projects. We can't wait too much longer because we obviously can't do anything until a resolution has been vetted by the board and approved before we can even go out there and submit an RFP. And as the attorney has said, there's a process for all that. So we could this process could very well take us 3-4 weeks, a whole month to go through the process. So if the board was to consider the resolution at the next meeting, we would be able to start the RFP process, and it would probably take us through the month of April. And then at that point in time, we would be basically kind of competing with all the other school projects that are out there and whatever the market bears at that point in time. So there is, in a way, a sense of urgency.
So let's do, I think Craig and Anjali, it's a hybrid of those two, because we did ask you to bring back the draft this time, and you did. And this is the draft. So we'll bring it back next time, cleaned up, so it looks like not a draft. And then we will put it in discussion action. If we're okay with it, we'll just pass it, or we'll have a vote on it in 2 weeks. Otherwise, we can give you more feedback. Does that sound?
That will work.
So there's a possibility at the next board meeting, we can have an action on it. If we put it discussion action.
Oh, so as I understand, we will agendize it as a
Discussion action.
and
Discussion slash action,
action.
yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, 6.2, budget update from Chris.
Okay. Change hats. Good evening. Tonight is our continuing update to the board in regards to our current year's budget, and obviously some information that will help us build our budget for the 18-19 school year. The last chance I had to update the board was in December when we presented the first interim budget. Since that time, we've gotten a chance to hear what the governor is proposing as part of his proposed 18-19 budget. And with some of the information that we learned, I want to share some of that information with you tonight. What I share with you tonight is just some aspects of the changes. As you probably realize, at our first meeting in March, we'll be bringing to you officially the second interim report. And within the second interim report, it will take into account all the changes since our first interim report. But maybe more importantly about tonight is really talking about next year's assumptions. It will take into account all the changes in the assumptions, whether it be revenue or expenditures, so that you will have a much better picture. And when we talk about the multi-year projection out, it will give us a better picture of what that looks like. So tonight, I just want to go through some highlights of some of the information that we've heard. Proposition 98, we've all heard about Proposition 98. Proposition 98 is the primary funding mechanism for school districts. It's the guaranteed minimum funding level for education. It's kind of ironic that it's a minimum funding guarantee, which is leading to our current issues of lack of funding or not fully funding education. But the reality is, as you can see over this span of time, our revenue under Proposition 98 has been very volatile. Back when the recession hit us back in 2007-8, you saw the beginning of some periods of time where we were barely getting minimal funding, and actually we were seeing a reduction in funding. But today, or I mean, not today, but next year, the governor is proposing that they will increase funding to Proposition 98 by about $3 billion more than that they're currently funding this year. So, I mean, this is a very positive message, I think. We're hearing about it. And then when we attended the school services workshop, one of the things that they point out is that when you look at this bar graph here, if you look at the average increase each year over the span of time, it's Proposition 98 had increased over this time by about 4%. I mean, again, as I said, we don't live in a very stable financing mechanism for education, but had they told us back in 2008-9 that we were going to be able to guarantee you a 4% yearly increase, I think we would have taken it and would have helped us plan better. But the reality is we're still dealing with a system that's not really stable. But Proposition 98 is going to be funded. And the main thing on the list here is LCFF. You've heard me talk about LCFF, our primary funding mechanism. When LCFF was created back when the recession hit us, the plan was always to eventually restore full funding of LCFF by the year 2021. And so the good news is that we are about, 2 years ahead of schedule. When Governor Brown implemented LCFF, again, it was with a promise that we would be reaching our fully restored or get back to that 2007-8 funding level at some point in time. But the way the state economy has been going, the governor is actually going to fully fund it this coming year. So those are some of the things I'll talk about in a few minutes about the major changes to our budget. But just a couple of other highlights as far as what's built into the state budget. Again, one-time funding, the governor's proposing to set aside, again, one-time funds to education. There's, again, some other additional funding for different things. Let me get then to the impacts to our district budget. So as I mentioned to you back in December, we had presented to you the budget based on the set of assumptions at that point in time. And you'll always hear me talk about that. When I start talking about assumptions today, the assumptions I talk about today may very well change tomorrow, may very well change the next couple months. I know for certain between now and May, we will get another set of assumptions. And so what I share with you tonight may very well change. And then obviously, whenever the state eventually adopts its budget, that will be basically what our budget will be based upon. But I just want to highlight a couple of things. Since I reported to you in December, again, the major changes are reflected here in these kind of greenish oval boxes. In December, we were still anticipating that LCFF wasn't going to be fully funded, not at that 100% level, not into the year 21-22. And so based on the changes, you can see where the level of LCFF funding was changing considerably. But now with the governor's proposal, he's proposing that LCFF will be fully funded starting next year. And so what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of us? So just with that change in funding, we were really anticipating the gap at 39.12 now being at 100%. What it means right now is that we would add, or we would adjust what we were projecting revenue-wise for 18-19 by about $4.5 million. So let me stop for a second, make sure I'm saying this, to explain to everybody. So based on these new set of assumptions, we are now projecting that our revenue for 18-19 will be about $4.5 million more than what we were projecting initially when I presented to you the assumptions in December. So to us, that will have an impact on our bottom line, and I'll show you that in a few minutes, but that's one of the major differences just with that increase. Some of the other subtle changes too, the COLA assumptions have changed. Back in December, the COLAs are represented in that third column there. Next year's COLA in December was projected at 2.15%. In January here, the governor is projecting that the governor and the legislative analyst's office and the Department of Finance is projecting next year's COLA now to be 2.51. So as you can see there, a lot of things are influencing the changes in these revenue projections. As I mentioned, the gap closure rate has changed, the COLA rate has changed, and one other piece that's changed this number is our projected enrollment. As you recall, when Tom Williams, a demographer, shared his updated report to the board, at that point in time, he revised his projected enrollment for next year, 2018-19. When I presented to you in December, the first interim report, we were still using last year's report. But when Tom came and presented, he presented his enrollment projections for 18-19 to be about 365 fewer kids than what he had projected the year before. So the revenue assumptions I'm sharing with you here also take into account that further decline that Tom shared with us as part of that. So those are the three things that are influencing these numbers. Again, the gap closure rates has been completely eliminated. The percentage of the COLA has changed, and the number of students that we are projecting has changed, and all three of those things have changed those numbers. Just some other elements that obviously have an impact on our district. Again, those one-time funds. Governor Brown, on his way out, he's continuing with that theme of providing additional funding, albeit not ongoing, but one time in nature. So for our school district, they're proposing about $295 per kid or per average daily attendance. And so based on our ADA number, it projects out to be about $5.2 million of additional funding, but again, one time. Some of the other things that obviously aren't in the budget that we're still a little disappointed in, there isn't any additional funding to help school districts offset the continued increase with the STRS and PERS, that's the retirement or the pension program. There still isn't any additional funding for home to school transportation. And there's just a little bit of COLA there for special education. So let me get into the nitty-gritty stuff. So I just want to show on this slide here that what I shared with you in December changes a little bit when you take into account the dollar amount per student, and that's the black line here. The blue dotted line is the enrollment projection that Tom had projected in last year and what he's projecting now. So let me get to the one slide and we can focus really on it, and I can talk a little bit more about this. So what I like to share with everybody, again, on this graph, kind of talks about how our funding mechanism works and helps us understand really, what's impacting us. So first and foremost, the fact that we're getting more money is great. We are receiving more money on a per pupil basis when you take into account the higher COLA, the LCFF gap closure rate. But yet at the same time, the amount of funding that we get is still tied to the amount of students that we have. So I'd like to point out is that for next year's purposes, 18-19, the average funding amount that we're going to be estimating per pupil is about $8,139 over this year's $7,721. And so that calculates out to roughly about a 5.41% increase on a per student or per child dollar amount. But you have to take into account that the blue dotted line represents our decline of enrollment. So as the number of students declines, we actually aren't receiving the full benefit. We're not receiving the full impact of what a 5.41% increase on a per student basis. So, and that kind of translates into this other graph. Before I focus just on the updated graph, just want to point out is that, again, there was that LCFF gap that we were talking about that wasn't projected to be completely closed, not until 21-22. But now, I'll go to this year, the updated one. So the plan is, again, that after this year, 2018-19, that gap is now completely closed, and now our funding is really now tied to whatever we get as far as COLA. As you recall with LCFF, as long as that gap existed, the amount of funding that got applied to that gap was purely dependent upon what the state wanted, well, what the state could apportion to school districts. Now that the gap is completely closed, our funding mechanism kind of goes back to the old way. We were, at one time before LCFF, we were just primarily funded based on COLA. So in some situations, it's probably better for us to now rely on one funding assumption that we can plan better. So the fact of the matter is, we're really now tied to the projected COLAs. But I do want to point out is that, remember, as I said, 18-19, that projected student increase per student was, 5.41%. So what does that look like in terms of our projected revenue as far as new dollars? So for 18-19, I'm going to focus here. 18-19, based on the number of students that we have, based on that dollar amount per student, the amount of increased funding for next year comes out to $3.696 million in terms of increased funding from the prior year. Some of that's base, some of that's supplemental. I think the board knows the differences between the base and supplemental funds, but more importantly, that really only represents about a 2.63% increase in funding. So I want to make sure I make the distinction is that, yes, school district, you got 5.41% increase in funding, but because we are in that mode of decline of enrollment, the net increase really is not the full amount of the increase. It really only translates into 2.63%. But I think it's also important to point out is that, you know, as we continue on our road through a decline of enrollment, the amount of the COLA, even though the COLA for, say, 1920's COLA is projected to be 2.41%. But because of that projected decline in enrollment, we're actually projecting less funding in 1920. So for 1920 purposes, right now what we're estimating is that we're going to receive less revenue in 1819 just because the decline of enrollment is impacting that number. Even though we're going to get a 2.41% COLA, we're actually receiving a negative 0.52% in terms of funding, and it's in that case it's primarily because of the decrease in enrollment. And if you kind of we've done the 5-year forecast, so we've calculated everything out to 22, 23, and again these are just assumptions today. 1920, we're not basically going to be receiving anything more than what we got the year before. 2021, even again with the COLA projected at 3.17, because of the decline, we're only calculating that we're going to receive basically about a 0.67% increase in new funding. So that's the theme that I think we need to understand, is that we'll be receiving more money, but the amount of money that we're going to be receiving from one year to the next is going to be purely dependent upon our enrollment. I just want to keep reminding us that even now with the additional funding that we're getting, one of the things that will still continue to impact us is the continued ongoing cost increases due to the state pension programs. And I've shared this with the board, is that, you know, for a district our size and the amount of payroll that we have, with the projected, I'm sorry, with the oops. You know, with the projected increases, annual increases with STRS and PERS, you know, like for STRS, it's about a 1.85% each year. These incremental increases translate to roughly anywhere from 1.8 to now almost $2.1 million of an increased cost year over year for just the PERS and STRS increase. So think back a few minutes ago when I started talking to you about what we're projecting as far as any new money. So in a year where we're, you know, barely getting, say $1 million of new revenue, the cost of the PERS and STRS piece is literally consuming any of the increases in new funding that we get. So I just want to make sure that people understand is that, you know, we're still going to continue to have to deal with this. I would call it tonight we're talking about what changes are happening with our budget as far as the structural deficit that we're talking about. But this alone by itself, I would say, continues to be a structural deficit problem for not just for us, but for every school district up in the state of California. So the fact that, you know, this $2 million yearly increase to the budget has a huge implication on our multi-year. So let me get to the multi-year. So first, showing off, this is what we shared with you in December. Basically, we were projecting a deficit for the coming years between $5 to $6 million. Now, based on some of the information I've shared with you, here's what's going to change when we come back and present to you in March. As I mentioned, the 18-19 budget now will reflect that increase in revenue to account for the LCFF gap being 100% eliminated, about $4.5 million of additional revenue. I know we'll be talking about the reorganization and talk a little bit about the budget cuts that are coming. Right now, best estimate in terms of reductions is somewhere around $3 million. When I mentioned to the board that when we were using Tom Williams's projected enrollment from his previous report, that the additional 365 kids that he is projecting fewer than what we had originally estimated, that additional 365 kid drop equates to about 15 fewer FTEs that we will no longer need to budget in the projections for next year. So roughly about $100,000 or so per FTE. That could generate an additional savings on top of what we had already factored into our multi-year by about another $1.5 million or so. So roughly speaking, you know, with the increase in revenue, the ongoing reductions, as we'll learn a little bit more about that in a little bit, and then the staffing reduction to match where we are with the projected enrollment, that would turn our deficit situation completely around almost, because it's about $9 million change that will basically flip that almost $6 million deficit right side up. Now, there's still some other things on the budget that will have an impact on our bottom line. Just to mention, we talked about the one-time funds. We still have some one-time revenue in the budget. And then obviously a couple of unknowns. I know we're still exploring fee-based preschool and daycare programs to potentially generate some additional revenues. And I think the largest piece right now, especially we've heard from our teachers, staff here about what can the district do with negotiations. So I think the facts that we have here is I think we are now probably in a much better situation now to sit down and talk at negotiations. Our situation, again, I think continues to be something we should monitor closely. This new information takes care of our current situation to get us right side up. This should address pretty much almost most of the projected deficit for these years that we're showing here. But again, as I mentioned, the PERS and the STIRS piece will still continue to be a concern for the district. So that is something that we'll still need to try to stay ahead of. But I think most importantly for the board, I know Phyllis is not here tonight, but again, it's one of those things that I've heard very clear from the board is that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we meet our financial obligations by making sure that we have both the legal required reserve, which is 3%, and on top of that, the additional board reserve requirement of 3%. So, and I know as part of our board priorities this year, the plan is to make sure that we can address the deficit. So I think we will have met that first priority when we come back and update the board in March. So I'll answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Phyllis isn't here, but she's watching, and so you answered her question without her even being here to ask it. I did go to the Capital Advisor's presentation of the governor's assumptions, and it was good to see those numbers at that presentation, but nice to see them as they're reflected for our school district. So thank you for the presentation. So do you want to start with any clarifying questions from the board members before we have a discussion, or we need to? Anyone have any clarifying questions about the presentation?
So just wondering if the governor has ever addressed the STIRS and PERS pension issues, because it's pretty much all the district facing the same problems.
I mean, it's a fairly big topic, and it's not that the people out there have not been trying to get his attention on it. I believe it's just not been a priority for him. And that's the one thing too. I think we have to take in consideration just with all the politics that are going on. You know, we have a governor that's going out of office. A new governor coming in may have a different perspective on things. So there's a lot of unknowns. But as it is right now, most of the educational advocates out there are asking all the time for the state to consider providing some additional funding for the STRS and PERS. I think more specifically, if they could somehow put the STRS and PERS under the umbrella of a Proposition 98, then that would at least ensure that at some point in time the state will cover that cost. But just like anything else, Proposition 98 is that minimum funding guarantee. So until they change that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Leanne.
Question. So I think at one time you mentioned that when we have a declining enrollment, the state actually would fund us at a previous year's level of students. So even if we are predicting 365 less students, the state would, for next year, 18-19, they would actually give us funding for that 365 students. So we actually might have more per student. So I'm wondering the 1,800 ADA per ADA you quote, did that include the extra funding from the students, that the 685 that extra we might get?
Okay, so let me try to answer your question. So as board member Liang was mentioning, as a district is going through that period of decline, for protection, our current year's funding will be based upon our student enrollment. In the case of a decline of enrollment, our funding will be based on the prior year's average daily attendance. So the question here is, what I'm projecting here takes into account that our student number for funding purposes is based upon the prior year's projected number, or what we project the prior year's number to be. So we have taken into account the decline. But I think maybe to the question you're getting at too is, you've heard me talk about that the way the mechanism works is that as the district is in a decline mode, we will always be funded on the higher of the 2 years comparison of enrollment. Obviously, if all of a sudden tomorrow or the next year enrollment is back up on the uptake, if you have more students than the year before, you will be funded on the higher amount of students. But the problem we have to understand is, if for some reason we all of a sudden go completely flat, if this projected enrollment, right, we are projecting, well, this year's enrollment as of October was 18,002. Next year's enrollment is projected to be at 17,500. Say 1920, Tom's projections are totally off and we are now kind of flattening out. So if in 2019, say 2019-20 here, we really don't decline down to 17,145 kids. Say we drop down to 17,525 kids, a few more kids. The fact of the matter is we're basically not receiving any more funding than the year before because our enrollment hasn't grown higher than the year before, but the enrollment hasn't declined either in comparison to the year before. So that's where I think we have to be cautious, is that our enrollment will eventually flatten itself out. But the moment our enrollment starts to flatten out and start to go back up, we will have to hire back more teachers, more classroom teachers. So for every 25 kids that we get at that point in time will be an additional teacher, an additional $100,000 to the budget. I don't know if did I answer your question?
You did. The answer was yes. That you that you included. Yeah, it's already included.
Okay.
Anyone else on budget? Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, 6.3, do we have a presentation?
Do we
Yeah.
have discussion now?
Oh,
I didn't know if you.
yeah, sorry.
I
Yes,
just
sorry.
want to-
Clarifying questions
Yeah,
were
I
done, yeah.
just,
But Chris, you can stay seated while we have the discussion. We can just ask you from here. Sure.
Kind of clarifying.
Okay,
Just want
sure.
to confirm. It seems at the end we are looking at a possible balanced budget, no deficit for next school year. Just
Yeah, I believe with, remember, we have an assumption in there of approximately
Yeah.
$3 million of cuts in there. And if you're assuming, it depends on what you're targeting in order to be able to give salary increases or not, right? And we don't have that number, so it's hard to answer your question. But in terms of if you don't take into account our desire to give salary increases, yes, we would be able to balance the budget to include out years. If you remember, though, we had set a target of closer to $10 million that we felt between revenue enhancement and budget cutting and a little bit of uptick. We weren't expecting this much, that we could be able to afford everything, including some salary increases. So with the numbers you're seeing here, it's closer to 9 million, so we fell short of what we want. But what's really great that I want to clarify to everybody is because these are ongoing funds, it allows us to, it has bought us time for our enterprise preschool, after-school programs, et cetera, to get kicked off, which is new ongoing revenue, which allows us to bank on a certain amount of money, right? Because if the governor hadn't put the money up front, my answer to you would be no, we're actually far short of being able to balance the budget. But the short answer is yes. If we're only talking about having more or as much revenue in as we are spending out, yes, we will be there by next year.
okay. I have one more question. Anyone else want to ask?
No, go ahead. Thank you.
So, I think one of our board's priority is that we would have a flexible structure to adjust to ebbs and flows in our enrollment. Because I'm a bit confused because declining enrollment was mentioned so many times in today's presentation, but then I think I heard from your explanation at Maya Host also that it's normal and expected for a school district to have ups and downs, and then we would adjust to that, and you would have you are capable to adjust and take steps to adjust our school size, administration size, to the student body size.
Right.
Is that
And again, that was my statement around that was about balancing enrollment. And I've always said declining enrollment is a budget problem, but we're going to fix it by doing all sorts of other things like we're talking about, right? Revenue enhancement, cutting, a better governor's budget, et cetera. And we will be able to get through, and because Chris is planning out and taking into account that declining enrollment. But I don't want it to seem like I'm saying that there's no budget problem associated with declining enrollment. There is, and we're going to fix it. But what I did say is that we have to build a system for balancing enrollment that will withstand the ebbs and flows. But that's different from a budget question. That's how you balance enrollment so you don't have one elementary school with 1,200 kids and another one with 279. Those are totally different issues.
so?
I
you
want to do the
will-
point of order. I
Okay.
think the balance of enrollment is not related to this item.
So in terms of budget, you are confident that you will have generated sufficient revenue when the district might have lower budget. You are confident that the revenue generation will provide us
as long as
safety net.
Yes, as long as we're not talking yet about what kind of other enhancements we have to do salary or otherwise, if you leave that out, I'm very, very confident that we are able to balance the budget with the assumptions of some budget cutting and not as much as we originally thought, luckily, and the governor's new budget.
It's good to know. Thank you.
And thank you for your point of order also, Kristen. Okay, so good with the budget update discussion, everyone? Okay, so we'll now move on to 6.3, discussion of first read of Board Policy 113, district and school websites.
Right, so you have in front of you a proposed, it's a first read with some proposed changes to Board Policy 1113. The goal with this revised policy is to ensure that our website's accessible to all, and also we have in place what we are legally required to have in place in regards to websites. What you'll notice on your red line is most of the changes have to do with comparison documents, where you would compare this document to other documents, and information in regards to privacy of students and staff in regards to photos, names, and information. And so Jeff and I are available to, if you have any clarifying questions about this, and then what we plan to do, if there are no concerns, we would bring it forward to the next board meeting for a second read and approval, or a second read as a consent item.
Did anyone have questions on these when they looked at them?
Not right now.
Okay, so thank you, Leslie.
So can we just bring it back on consent? Is that everyone feels comfortable with it, and we'll just remove the red line and just bring it as a clean on consent?
Yeah.
Kristen, you want to bring it on consent? Okay,
Great.
so bring it back on
Thank you.
consent. Okay.
Thank you.
So really quick, it's 8 o'clock. Does anybody need a break, or are you ready to continue on? Kristen Liang, board member. I can't see the EC. EC, are you okay? EC, you need a break, or everyone's good? Okay. No break right now. Okay. So, okay. So next item, discussion action item 7.1, realigning CUSD organizational structures and systems. I just want to mention our procedure. We're going to hear a presentation, and then the board will have opportunity to ask clarifying questions. And if then there's any public comment, we'll take those, and then we'll follow that with a discussion. Okay, Stacy.
Thank you. While we get it set up, I do appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I know been patient. And just kind of a preface with it, this is always a really, really tough time of the year and a tough discussion, because as we're talking about making changes, it always requires affecting people's lives. And so always keep that in mind. It's always easy for us to say we're talking about positions, but there's always a face with the position. And so we do move forward with that. And a lot of things that we do, we really do try to take into consideration that human part of it, and the feelings, and knowing that it does affect people. And so they're not easy decisions, they're not easy discussions. But I thought I'd step back tonight, and there's a lot of rumors out there twirling about what's going on and where we are and where our budget deficit is and what's happening. But we really wanted to step back tonight, and before start talking about the restructure, it's the question of the why. Why are we even having these discussions tonight? Why are we hearing these rumors? Why are we making some changes? And I'll remind that our board priority, we really are trying to do a restructure that focuses our services on what's best for students and what the students need at the school site. In January, I presented information as far as where we had been in staffing over the years and changes. We kind of called it the CUSD History Walk. And I don't think CUSD is any different than any other district, and that you kind of go through ebbs and flows with new initiatives that come out. One of the new initiatives was Common Core that came out 3-4 years ago, and all districts had this influx of money, this new initiative, and with that a lot of staffing increased. And so you can see that over the history of CUSD. We had a huge increase in staffing across the board. But as things begin to roll out and continue to roll out, those resources really need to leave the district level and start being ebbed back down to the school sites. So that's really part of our focus tonight as well. So really, when we talk about why do we need to restructure our systems, it's 3 different areas that we talk about. One, Chris alluded to, we have the structural deficit. How do we make sure that the money we're bringing in covers our costs going out? I'm very simple in my math explanation. You know, we need to be fiscally sound in that. The other one is that we are in declining enrollment. When we're declining enrollment, that means there are less students. If there's less students, there really should theoretically be less staff that are supporting the students in the classrooms. The third one is our resources really need to be focused on the school sites and ensuring that our students are getting that sound educational environment. And when we talk about that educational environment, it really is, it's a tiered system. We need to meet their academic needs, we need to meet their behavioral needs, and we need to meet their emotional, social needs as well. So really, that's why we're talking about the restructure of the alignment. The other piece to think about it is there's really differences when we talk about how we staff. Every year, and Chris shared when we were projecting forward, we know based on student enrollment, we know where teacher-wise, certificated staff, that we can make some adjustments. So every year we're projecting, if we know there's less students, we're building into the budget that we're going to have less teachers. It's not something that we overtly go out and say, you know what, we're reducing 15 teachers because we have enough retirement position that teachers leave and then we don't fill positions. So that's naturally happening. With classified, it's very different because when we hire classified, it's not something that we can just say, you know what, we don't need you next year, we're not going to fill your position or we're going to hire. Different ed code, different laws apply to that. So it's a more overt process that we literally have to come forward and say, we're laying off people. So just to clarify that, because I think over the last 2 to 3 years, we have been reducing certificated, and oftentimes there's a feeling that we're only reducing classified, but we really have been keeping consistent with where we need to be for staffing. So some of my numbers tonight really did a comparison back to where we were about in 2012 with our enrollment and where we were with staffing, and how do we get back to that number. So this is our current org chart, and I don't know if everyone can see where there are some red highlighted areas. We have been gathering information, having discussions across the board with all of our management. We're getting feedback from surveys from the parents and the community. Really, what it is that, what do we want to protect and ensure happens in CUSD? And the most common survey result, discussion result is, we really want you to stay away from the classroom. And we heard that again and again, stay away from the classroom as much as you can. So with that, that's a challenge because...
Is there any way for us to see that better or no? Should we come up close?
Can we go sit down on the ground up here?
Because we don't have that one on our iPad, so.
Oh, well, let me see, I can probably...
What do you call that point of what when you want to
Zoom it in.
clarification or something?
Does that work?
No.
No.
What's that?
No.
You need Jeff's help now.
Yeah.
Stacy, you might just need to read the.
We can come up, right? Or no, is that rude?
Good, but I mean, I think I. Oh.
She doesn't have her set up that way.
Disclaimer, it's not my computer.
Can we print the
Yeah,
page
I think it's
for
gonna
the
be
board
easier that
members?
we just read off.
I'll walk through where...
Okay.
Okay, that's the
Okay.
important thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
It's coming. I think that will disappear. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll kind of walk through where the changes are. We really, again, we went through all of the departments across the entire district. Where can we make some reductions? And again, knowing that wherever we choose to make a reduction, it's affecting people, and that's that difficult part of it. There is no way to reduce staff without it affecting people. And so it really was, where can we make the majority of our changes at? Last year we did some changes with our instruction department. We had brought forward some layoffs, some reductions in that area. We did some restructuring with it moving forward, trying to put some things in place. We also knew at that time that we needed to really come back and revisit, and a lot of it was oftentimes we said, you know, we need to get our new superintendent on board because we really need to have that vision in place where we're going. We have a very strong vision now that we really are about focusing on the kids in the classroom. So under instructional service, there's 5 red boxes there, 6 red boxes, because I'll pull some over. we're really looking at our coordinators, executive director, and then we have coordinators that fall under the technology. So in some senses, instruction and technology, we're working previously in isolation. Last year, we really tried to blend the two together so that instruction and technology went together. The other area that really focused on is family and community engagement. We've alluded to that we really, really want to get out there and try to do some revenue enhancement and looking at preschools and after schools, and that will really be where Leslie is going to take on that challenge, and so she will be moving out of her position as a family and community engagement and going into the enterprise of the preschools and after schools. The other change that is highlighted in red, but it's not going away, is our student assignment. That's actually going to shift under Jeff's position of information officer. So this is what the new org chart will look like. Our envision of it is really a more streamlined. So this is at management level. And again, we didn't put all the specific positions underneath that outline into other positions. This is about management. So if you look under instruction, there really is a new streamline. One of the first things that we identified, and actually we probably identified before we even finished last year, is really that need to have that associate superintendent of instruction or ed services. That really is that leader within that department, and that position needs to come back because that allows us to streamline everything below that. So underneath the ed services associate sup would be one senior director, executive director, and then there would be 3 assistant directors. So we are reducing significantly in the management level there. There will be more responsibilities on those that are remaining, but it'll be a few less people in that area. We have not addressed the changes with special ed in the management at this point. We know that that's an area that we want to take a look at. I think the board has asked several questions about special ed and staffing, and we really are taking a look at that, how to best address the issue as we move forward. Again, under communication, you can see that Jeff will take on the manager of student services. Under business services, there is one minor change. And last year, we started the process with our custodians. We disbanded all of our night teams, and we had custodians placed back out on the site. So they actually became the responsibility of the sites. Every elementary school had a day custodian, a night custodian. So minimally, there was at least 2 custodians every site. This year, we're continuing that process. We still had lead custodians that were in place. We will disband the lead custodians, and we'll put those custodial services directly on the sites. Again, by seeing the box over here, our focus really is what do we need to provide on the sites where our students are to have the most resources and the most support, where we're sending out the support from district office and let them be on the site. Because we're reducing in instruction, we also know that we need to support our principals on the sites with their instructional leadership. And so we will have instructional coaches, and we'd also would like to have lead teachers on each of the sites. I think in our visits so often, and when we're out on the sites, we hear from staff, our teachers are really experts in a lot of areas. They have been PD'd to death in some areas, they say. And so now we need to use their expert in being those lead teachers on the sites that are sharing with their colleagues and leading that instructional flow. That really is an intent to support the site. Then they would have their own staff, their own people that are training their teachers. The instructional coaches would still not be one on each campus, but they would be shared within all the sites as we go out. More specifically looking at the ed services, just kind of highlighting where that is again, because that is probably where major changes are happening. The ed services would be, I think the title of Ed Services covers more than just an instruction department, because Ed Services really is about the pupil services, the instruction, the curriculum, and a broader title. Special ed, if you look on the left, that's really remaining the same at this point, what we have for support. On the right side, again, very streamlined. We have 1 director and underneath 3 assistant directors. The rest is all resources out on the school sites. So the why that we asked at the beginning, how are we going to get to the why? How are we going to meet our operational deficit? How are we going to address declining enrollment? And how are we going to restructure? With all of these bullets part, we're going to move forward. We're going to reduce the district office level support. Again, that was highlighted very strongly in the Ed Services, Instructional Services Department. We're going to add instructional coaches to the support leadership. Again, that's going to be our own teachers, staff members who are within the district, we hoping and will apply for those jobs and become those leaders on the sites. We still have to negotiate this, but our intent is we really want to provide some kind of a stipend to our teachers on the site so that they get compensated for what they're expected to do with the lead and sharing their expertise as well. The other piece, we know special ed is an issue, but we also know that we're really looking at how do we build a multi-tiered system of support on all the sites. And right now, a lot of things are happening where we're getting a lot of kids into special education, and I think classroom teachers are frustrated with how do we better address the needs of the students in the general ed classroom that are sitting in there. So we really, our intent is we want to increase the number of psychologists and the resource teachers that are at the sites. That comes with its challenge because we also know that special education teachers are very difficult to find. I think that really comes down to if we can build a stronger structure support where they feel supported, we will be able to attract them. And then we want to create a universal service model to provide technology support. So I did meet with our SSITs today, talked very broadly about them as revamping what that looks like. Didn't roll out a structural plan because there's still some work to be done in that area that we know, but how do we best support our sites with the technology that's out there? I mentioned increased direct custodial services. Again, our lead custodians will no longer be covering various sites. They will actually we'll have custodians on the sites, and we'll increase the number of custodians on each of the school sites. And then the development of the preschool and after-school programs, that will be our revenue enhancement as well. So kind of a snapshot of how that's all going to look. Our recommendations that will actually come to the board on the 27th, because they do require some resolutions that are either layoffs or reductions or reassignments. Under the management, we would be reducing 10 management positions. It's a reduction of about a $1.5 million in cost, and those 10 represent about 10% of our total management group. Under CEA, we're reducing 22. Those would be our TOSAs and our instructional support teachers with a reduction of about 2.3%. Of our total CEA employee group, and that would be a savings of a $2.28 million. CSEA is going to have a reduction in 24. That would involve SITs, IAs, our staff secretary. I did highlight in yellow, those are positions that are vacant, have been vacant for a while, so they're not actually going to be a person that's reduced. It'll be the position that'll be reduced. That represents 4.2% of the CSEA work group and would be a savings of about $950,000. And then down here in the corner is our SEIU, that's our lead custodians, and we have one cafeteria assistant that we're able to reduce down, and so it's a cost savings of about $386,000. So that total equates to about $6 million, because we also have some other areas. Again, we hear over and over so much professional development. We really are trying to cut back on the amount of professional development, which also reduces the cost of our subs, and have some significant savings there. There's also some other program changes that we can make, things that we realize that maybe right now isn't the best time to be doing that. We can postpone that. We have an administrator coach that we really feel like we can be our own coach from within, and we'll provide that support. And so that all told us to about approximately $6 million in saving. With that said, we also know that to continue keeping that structure, when I talked about that new education services structure specifically, we're going to have to revamp and bring some back. I said we needed to bring our associate superintendent back, and under that is 3 assistant directors. Under CEA, if we're reducing our ISTs, we're still going to have instructional coaches come back, so we'll be bringing back 11 instructional coaches. We're going to increase our psychologists, our resource specialists, and our lead teacher stipends. And then our SEIUs, we're actually bringing back 3 custodians. Even though we're reducing the lead custodians, we know that we need to cover the rooms that they were scheduled to clean in their groupings. And so that would be an approximate cost of $3 million. And so it would be a total cost savings of about $3 million, which Chris had built into his assumptions as cost reductions as well. Again, the difficult conversation going on right now is that we're hearing, and we heard earlier tonight about negotiations and the desire to give a salary increase, and we certainly have a desire to keep our employees, and we know it's difficult to live here. We hear every day the difficulties, and so we do want to give a salary increase. That is our intent. So it's really difficult to stand up here and talk about layoffs and reductions, but on the next week I'll be at the table talking about salary increases. But we also know that that's the world we live in, and we really do have to operate with that. And it's hard if you're one of the people that I'm sitting there talking to and saying, you know, we're going to lay you off, but the other employees may get a salary increase. The other thing is that when we go through the layoff process, our intent is always to try to get somebody and everybody a position back, whether it's comparable to their position or somewhere in the organization. And so that's one of the reasons we really wanted to start early again this year, so that I can have the conversations. We can look at what vacancies we have. They have an opportunity in the next 4 months, because these don't go into effect till July 1 as well. So there, back to the three. We had 3 whys, and how are we going to attain it? We're going to attack our operational deficit by a savings of about $3 million through the reductions. We're going to address our declining enrollment, because our staffing really will reflect across all unions where we are dropping. Our numbers are consistent to about where we were in 2012 with all 4 units, the CSEA, SEIU, CEA, and management. And then the last one is we're going to ensure that our sites are provided with the resources to ensure students are successful. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. And as you mentioned, it's a very difficult topic to present on. So thank you for your delivery on a difficult topic. Before we take clarifying questions from the board, I meant to set the tone before we started that we don't actually, as a board, vote on a reorg of this type. This is the staff's, the staff puts forward that we can, when we vote on a budget later in the year, this will be incorporated into our thinking that can we pass a budget with this information, but we don't actually vote on a reorg. A board doesn't act, that's not a function of a school board.
The one piece that will be coming back to the board would be any of the new job descriptions.
Yeah,
that are
job
associated
descriptions
with that.
would,
Those
yeah.
I would bring back to the board for approval, and I will plan on bringing those on the February 27th board meeting.
So, so we'll take clarifying questions, and then we'll listen to any public. Do we have public comments? Okay, and then we'll come back and have a board discussion about this item.
I just,
go ahead,
just
Anjali.
a quick one, just because there's so many acronyms. What does SSITS stand for again?
School Site Instructional Tech Specialists.
So those are the tech.
Classified tech people.
Okay.
That are on the site.
Kristen?
I have a question. From the CSEA, the 24 yellow positions, it shows the saving is $950K. I don't quite understand about this, because we are not spending because they are vacancy, right?
No, only the yellow highlighted ones are vacant. So we have IA, specialized staff secretary and programmer that are vacant currently. If they're in black, those are currently held by an employee.
So the 950K is included, is only for the black position?
No,
or
the
is
yellow
for
ones are vacant, so they've been budgeted for, but we don't have an actual person in them currently, and some of them have been vacant since the beginning of the year. We haven't been able to fill them, and we found other opportunities to provide the service. So there's actually a cost associated to them. There's just not a body or a live person associated to them.
So we would take it out of future budget.
So I would provide a layoff notice to the union, but it wouldn't actually go to a person.
Okay, Anjali, do you have one?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on the SSITS. Aren't some of those positions funded by the local funds, like local PTAs or foundations at the school sites?
Yes, and so we actually, that is one of the pieces that we really have to sit down and have that discussion in, because the other, when we talk about the restructure and realignment, there really is a need to be the equity among the campuses, and honestly, there isn't equity in some of our campuses. Some of ours don't have that additional funding. They don't have the opportunity to fund additional hours. So when we're looking at the restructure, how do we truly make it equitable for every site that maybe doesn't have the same level of funding?
So your recommendation is to take it away from every site?
We haven't made that final decision at this point. We're still in discussion.
I know, but what shows on the board is that, because when you went to the other slide, the SSITS was not on it at all. Like, they're not listed anywhere.
So can I?
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand.
In terms of budget and our conversation, we only account for those that are paid through the district, essentially, right? But because the other is funding essentially that is paid by the additional amount that is there is actually paid by a different source, right? So in terms of budget, what ends up being saved is what is consistent that we provide across all of the sites, not the additional amount that is brought in essentially as a grant from the schools.
So keeping that in mind, then we'll end up with some schools, if they have the funding, would have the support.
We have, that's what she's saying, we have not
Right.
had that conversation or decision, but that is our challenge right now, is how do you work all this out? Because that's a complicating issue.
Yeah, the clarification, it has the SSITs up there. We're not eliminating all SSITs. We are still, our recommendation will be to reduce by 10. So we would still have 15 SITs, recognizing that the middle schools probably need to maintain their level of support that they currently have. And that would leave 10 to restructure how do they best support the elementary schools, as well as taking into consideration how do we address that some sites have been funding and some haven't.
Any more clarifying questions, or can I take the public comments? Okay, I'll take the public comments. So we have 3 minutes per speaker. And the first one, Marissa Kaminsky. Karmatsky, sorry. Sorry about that. No, it wasn't. Sorry about that.
It was not close.
So hi, yes, I'm Marisa Kakmarsky. I am the School Site Instructional Technology Specialist. That's what SIT stands for, at Stocklemire. I've been there for about 8 years. What I'd like to do tonight is I would like to just, well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for your time, your efforts. I know you guys are working hard to balance the budget, find money for our raises. We're all happy for that. I certainly am. But one of the things I want to make sure as you go forward is to think about the role of the instructional technology specialist on campus. One of the things, as you eliminate positions and if you centralize that support from the district location, one of the things that does is it takes that connection to a body on campus away from them every day. Our job is not just about going out and fixing things. We have hands-on with teachers, with students. We're helping them find ways to do new things. We're trying to impart knowledge. Every day I find joy in showing a student or a teacher how to fix something that I came to fix. So the next time it happens, they don't have to call me. Even if they've got the courage to do it, they don't have to. So that's it's little things like that. It's things like going into the classroom and helping with an activity that a teacher is doing with technology and saying, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then I go off and I talk to other teachers, and I get to be the walking blog. I get to be the infection that goes around campus saying, look, oh, so-and-so did this. You want to try that? And spreading that around. And as overwhelmed as teachers are, there just aren't a lot of things in place for teachers to get that kind of experience and find out what everybody else is doing, especially in a school our size. Teachers are just overwhelmed with everything else they're doing. So it's, I think, removing the tech specialists. I know you're trying to find ways to cut it. If you do have to reduce hours, I can understand that, but taking them physically off campus, I think would do a disservice to supporting the teachers and supporting the students in everything that they're doing on campus. One of the reasons when we reclassified our position about, 4 or 5 years ago, the district specifically said they wanted the term school site added onto our title. And we are very proud to be on the school site, and we think it's important for us to be there. A couple of things to ponder, I hope, is the fact that as you look at the budget, and it said $950,000 for the classified staff, you're talking about 10 positions. If there's a way not to eliminate all those positions, but maybe cut some hours, again, I think it's important to look at those options. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark Lundy. If I say anyone's name wrong, please correct me.
It's Lundy.
Okay.
Board members, Dr. Baker, Executive Cabinet, it's good to see you. Phyllis, wherever you are, I hope you're still watching. When I knew that we were going to have a meeting with Stacy, I knew it was going to be a rough day today. However, about 9:30 this morning, our meeting was at 1, about 9:30 this morning, my day got made. I walked into our makerspace, there was a 3rd grade class working in there, And one of the third grade students, her name was Caroline, was working on lettering something on some cardboard. And she was actually doing some really nice lettering, but she made a mistake. She put something a little too close together, and she started going, "Oh no!" And she was thinking she's just completely screwed it up. I walked over to her and I said, "I saw what you did. I think it's actually pretty good, but I want to tell you, did you know how you get better at lettering? It's by screwing up and learning. So you actually are now smarter than you were 30 seconds ago." And she's going, "Yes." That made my day. I don't care what else happens here today. My day is a net plus. You know, when we think of technology, we imagine millions of devices, all identical, running millions of lines of code, and well, that's true. The way we apply that technology is highly personalized. Each one of our teachers adapts their classroom to fit their students and their own teaching styles and the culture of their school community. You know, while our schools of choice, McAuliffe, Free, and the others, are explicitly different within our family of schools, in reality, each of our 25 campuses has its own personality, one that transcends the comings and goings of staff and students. Not too long ago, when tech started taking off on our campuses, individual schools could no longer support themselves technologically, and their parents' groups brought in people to support technology, a group now known as SITs. When we reclassified from tech media clerks, as we used to be known, to school site instructional technology specialists in 2013, it was in part to recognize the fact that the techs were now helping to identify and advise teachers about useful tools for their special classrooms. As recently as 3 years ago, our hours were increased to keep up with the demand that was still being covered in part by the parent groups. And as far as equity is concerned, my school is a Title I school, yet our parents have still opted to support an on-site person, something I'm quite grateful for, and has allowed DeVargas to do some pretty special things. Severing the school site instructional technology specialist home school ties from the school communities will deny them the support that allows teachers to concentrate on their classrooms. It also denies the parent groups from exercising self-determination on their campuses and within their school communities by opting to support their SITs with so-called soft money. Most SITs have developed particular skills and knowledge, and I'll skip down. After more than 30 years of working on the bleeding edge of technology, I can assure you that the need for human support is not going away anytime in the foreseeable future. Even though we've added more sophisticated management tools, there's always something new coming. Always. Despite repeated attempts over the past few years to make our primary student hardware hands-off manageable.
Last sentence, please.
We need our teachers to be able to concentrate on pedagogy, not on supporting technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dean McManus. 3 minutes, Dean.
So the number I'd like to impress on you guys is 1/3, 33%. So in this current proposal, the proposed cut of our SITS people, all of our support that's on staff, that's at each campus, is 1 out of 3. So 1 out of 3 of us are losing our jobs. And so the thing is that if you look at the current setup that is with IT, the average IT support person in the industry, the model supports 1 technician for 75 devices. Now, personally, at my elementary school, I have over 500 devices. So I am supporting 500 devices. And the thing is that what's interesting about that, that's not including projectors, printers, sound systems. It's not including my proctoring the testing. It's not including all of our projects that we have for supporting the infrastructure of IT and on our lab. As well as teacher training, which I just did last week. The big key is it's not a really good model if you go and you say, okay, now I'm supporting 500 devices, and then now I'm not. So those 500 devices haven't gone away. The difficulty with trying to go back to the 2012 model is that that's before any tablets. And so the thing is that I have over 400 iPads and tablets. And as much as they are less work, They're not no work. They're still supporting, especially we just have new Mozilla support that's coming on, and new infrastructure for software. And one of the things I was going to talk about also was the idea of going to centralized support. Now, I also worked in the industry for 25 plus years in tech support, and it was a real common myth to be able to go to centralized support or outsourcing. Those are like the big ways that you can go and look at a spreadsheet and cut numbers really quick. But the problem is that there's a whole bunch of soft costs and there's a whole bunch of unseen costs that are hit, and it really takes a big cut when you make those kind of just catastrophic removal of people. And one of the key things that I was looking at was I worked at SCCOE and in support of special needs kids. And we had that model where we would go out to support the schools. Now, the schools also had their own on-site people as well, but we would go there and we would go and support them. But the problem was that half the time we were actually doing traveling. We're going back and forth between places. And then when we get to a place, it's always new. You know, we may have some familiarity with the teacher, but the kind of connection that I have with my teachers and my principal and my students is, you know, like a family doctor. You know, and the thing is that when you go and you have a family doctor, they know about your family history, they know about your health history, they know about the things that were problems in the past, and they can get to solutions much quicker than somebody who is handling it on the phone or handling a kind of support like that. So anyway, the last piece is I think that it would be really good to look at some kind of flexible support that would find outside funding. I mean, we have this new thing that's going with LCFF and the one-time funding that's giving us a little bit of a buoy that can maybe help soften the blow of this, the deficit that was before. And I'm just saying that it would be really good to not have a catastrophic cut of staff that couldn't be regenerated, and as well as the goodwill between the teachers and the students and the staff.
Last sentence. Okay, great.
That's it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Christine Shepard.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to talk. I'm the SITS at Muir, and I've worked there, I think, over 17 years on the site. And it's a changing position. Each year has been different. When I first was there, we were opening computers and adding extra RAM and, you know, actually opening up the hardware. And it's changed a lot, but we still have always worked with students. And that's one thing I know that worries me if we are off and we don't have a SITS person on the site. We work with, you know, the kids daily, as everybody already had said. And so I think that it will really affect the students and the teachers and the staff if we aren't there. And there to immediately help them on a daily basis. And not only that, there are certain things that we were talking about the funding through the PTA and the equity, but really in our group, it somehow becomes equitable because if someone has more time at their school, they're doing a lot more research, and we're always sharing information with each other. So if someone had more time to do research about some Chromebooks, and some of us need to get new Chromebooks, we're always constantly sharing. So we're not like, oh, that person gets more hours than we do. We're always sharing, and we're a very tight group, and we use that information to help each other. So I think that it would be a real loss to not keep each other on our sites. We have different experiences, but we share them and we use them to the best of our ability to incorporate in our helping the teachers. So another thing that I want to bring up that someone had brought up is that we do help the teachers come up with new ideas. So for instance, a lot of us got information about Google Expeditions coming. You know, and so then there was this flutter. It's like, hey, have you gone, talked to them? Has anybody had them at their school? And we share this information. And I know my teachers don't have time to ask each other or ask other schools, you know, who got Google Expeditions to come. So we were all chattering, and that took quite a bit of time. And then when I talked to our staff, they were interested in having them come. And so I coordinated that, and that took a lot of time. The teachers don't have time to do that. And when they came and you were there, I mean, the kids had a very good experience from that. And those are the things that we add and can offer. And the teachers are so grateful that the students, you know, have this opportunity because we're on site. If we weren't on site, we couldn't do that. We could, you know, run over and help fix a computer or two, you know, and do that. But we couldn't give those experiences to the students. The other thing that's just more practical is also with the CASP testing. It doesn't get, you know, although we, you know, teachers have it down and we have it down, we still have to offer support. We're still running around. There's still problems all the time. Adobe updates are running right in the middle of your testing, even though you just updated. iTunes pops up, you know, and we need to be there because the teachers panic. They don't have that time to do that. So I hope that you would reconsider it because I think that, you know, we could come up with another model. You know, we're willing to talk with you or share our thoughts about it. But, you know, cutting hours, if that is really going to save the district money.
Last sentence, please.
Okay. I talk more than I thought I'd. Okay, so, you know, if you could consider other options, I think that we do indeed help in the classroom and we do, you know, affect the daily life of a student and a teacher and the staff. And I also wanted to thank all the support that we had from our group today of teachers and parents and other people here that share the same sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you. Zara Sadeghi. Okay, Zara left. Okay, Lori Cunningham. Okay. Okay. So we can turn it over to discussion.
I just want to express something about the school site sits because, you know, as we were talking and saying we're taking everything back to the school side, we are eliminating district positions and having lead teachers there. To me, it doesn't make sense if you're going to take away something that's already at a school site. So I'm kind of having challenges in understanding that. So I know you all are still talking about how to do this, but I would really emphasize that if we go back to what we had discussed as one of our priorities, we were trying to bring the support at the school to make it easier, and hearing everything that they do and knowing from experience when you have technology, if something breaks down, if you don't have somebody right there, it doesn't work calling somebody on the phone. The phone is great to have, but so that's how I look at that. And then I want to just make one more comment on a different thing, but we can do it after or?
No,
it's okay?
Go ahead, yeah.
I just wanted to kind of clarify or confirm, so the custodians, the way you're changing that is you're eliminating the leads, so then there's no, and they're just gonna, so every school site would have their own custodian.
Yes, currently, last year we disbanded the night teams, and so we placed those custodians back on the school site, so elementary schools then had a night custodian that they hadn't had in the past. With that, we had 6 leads that we left intact, and then they were kind of overseeing a group of schools. They'd have a home school of a middle school, and then they would clean rooms on the elementary, or otherwise they would just kind of check in to be kind of that provider, that bridge between the district and the sites. And so this year, we're eliminating those lead positions, but those 5 custodians that are still in leads, they will go back to the sites as regular custodians.
But but each school will have their own custodian. That's not going to be affected.
No, they will actually have they'll have
Additional.
more custodial support on the site.
Okay, so keeping that theme in mind, I would like to go back and say, you know, the SITS needs to, you know, we need to make sure that each school has their own technology person on site.
So any thoughts or other comments?
I think technology specialist is, if we lose them, it's very hard to hire back. They are the group that can easily find a better paying job, but they choose to serve in a school district. And as we are moving to 21st century education, we are having more instruction technology that's the future trend. So I think Dr. Baker probably has something in mind, but this is, I'm very surprised that we are taking away school site technology support, because when I visit school site like Montclair, they had a very successful technology program, and Mike Cellini told me they were successful because they have a technology specialist in the classroom, hold the teacher's hand to really provide them the support they need to cross that bridge into adopting a technology. And so I think you probably have a certain plan. Maybe you can share with us. And
Our plans at this time are still being made, and so I think that we should actually sit down some more with the group and with other folks and Jeff and the team and talk it through a little bit more, because I agree it's an odd thing to say we're putting the resources at the site, but this is one of the ones where the people are clearly at the site level. And because we haven't been able to flesh out everything that we're talking about, we have this timing thing that makes it so hard in where we are. But the truth is, these are positions that we don't have to make a decision before our February date and the March 15 and all the potential layoffs, et cetera. And we actually have time, and we're aware of that, and we know we need it because we just can't. And so we can share more with them what we were thinking and how it could work, and I'm sure they'll tell us why that's ridiculous, and then we'll go from there. But I do think we'll have that conversation. I'm just saying it doesn't. If you notice on the org charts, those positions don't sit there because the org charts are generally around more management and administrative, right? So we have time, is what I'm saying, and we can definitely work it through and either bring back a different plan that doesn't have us reducing there, or an explanation of what makes sense to do and why we would make such a decision. So I would just say I think we can. I get that this is an important thing, and I hear what board members are saying and what they all said, and I'm convinced it would be of value to meet and chat and work on that some more.
I had one question about the rationale too, as we were talking about like pushing things through the sites and using like in expertise within teachers that are already at the sites to do certain things that they've been trained in. Was there some thought process that teachers would be able to absorb some of the, like because of years of these wonderful people training them, or is that part of the thinking?
Well, it's part of the thinking that we do have some wonderful teachers who would be fabulous at doing that. I know that. So, yes, in some cases, actually, I think there are some folks who could step up in that way. But it's also that by providing more support at the sites, there might be other people as well. And really, the truth is, every site is different. And every site is different both in terms of who's had to step up already. Because remember, some sites have been afforded something that a lot don't have. And so the ones that don't have found a way to do it. And they have called on other people to make it happen. And what I will say is in the conversation, I just want to be upfront, I will have a real hard problem saying, yeah, let's bring it back, but let's leave it unequitable. So in all honesty, if we're bringing it back, I'm going to have a conversation about how much more money are we going to spend, because it is not fair to allow certain schools that can raise a lot of money to provide the very things that you're all saying need to be there, and somehow it's okay all this time for that inequity to be happening. All right, so I just want to be clear that I would love to have the conversation, but it's going to be tough because we have communities that are paying the salaries of people beyond what we can afford to do right now. So if we want to talk about increasing salary, I actually welcome the conversation. I mean, welcoming, increasing the positions.
So, okay. So, I mean, reducing these positions might not reduce the cost, because if we centralize everything in the district office, there will be travel time between school district, and then there will be learning time that
Yeah,
one person have to get used to the
Liang,
different
and please,
technology,
everybody,
right?
you're so way ahead of where we are with this. I actually don't know that that's the model we would go, that it's centralized at the district. In fact, I don't think we would. So again, I don't think it's worth going down this path. As I said, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about it. We'll have the conversation, and we'll see where we go. But we did not go to a place yet, because we have time with this one, to say, so where are the people? Are they, we haven't said we wouldn't still position other people at sites to do that work. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
So the motivation is equity. And I'm not, actually don't have a very good picture of how every school site and has the different hours.
So
we'll
hold-
bring that another
That's
time then.
something
Yeah.
that we need.
Okay, so 1 second of point of order or something. So Craig, we have this org chart and we've looked at it and we can have a discussion, but the board doesn't actually vote or on an
Right.
org chart. So what would be an action what would be a next step that we could take?
Well, the next step really that is more critical, where in terms of time,
Right.
are the ones that were the management positions, knowing that, and we have an item that will be about approving a new educational services assistant superintendent, which is really critical. So we will talk about that one. But other than that, all we need to hear are where there are concerns. You've expressed them, right? I hear it, and therefore we're going to go and talk about that. So the other question is, do you have other ones beyond this that you want us to think about, so that in case we have to bring something back? Okay. But you're not voting on the org chart. You're not voting on these things right now. You'll vote by way of, do you end up approving a budget? Do you end up okaying certain job descriptions that would replace certain other positions, et cetera? But it's not about you. The item that's on there is putting out in front of you the org chart ideas that were there. So you should be responding to any of them, not just the one, but any of them that are there that you think we need to look into more. From what
So just 1 sec. So Craig has heard us about the technology specialists. Is there any other items that you want to speak to? Yeah, Anjali?
different-
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying about, we should kind of, if there's other concerns we have on the org chart, we should kind of just express them, because we will not be voting on it or anything. On that regard, this is the first time we saw it.
Right.
And it was very difficult to read. And couple of things that caught the eye was that's why we were able to bring them up right away, and we have them in the audience too. So I don't know if there would be other things that we may want to point out, and we may only see them when they come under budgetary items, because that's when we get to vote. So would it be fair to ask that we just review this and we just email you if we have other things or something?
Yeah, I think that would be good. I guess to that point, especially since we have another item that's an action item around the job description for assistant soup, as long as we can deal with that one, separately at that time. That's the only time-sensitive one. You will have time. I know you were going to try to post that as. They're trying to get it posted right now onto this one so that everybody can see that. And then, you can review that. But I think, we bring it back again next time as well, unless there's anything relative to potential layoff notices beyond that I don't think there's anything we need today, right? Right. Yeah. So I would encourage people to respond, send me messages about anything, or sit and meet with me. We'll talk about it. We will follow up with our colleagues here and continue the conversation.
Just,
Leanne.
This is regarding the custodian. So we know each school site now has 1 day custodian and 1 night custodian, or it's different?
It depends on the school sites. Minimally, they all have a day and a night. So the larger schools have additional custodial. Middle schools all have additional custodians.
Wait, so each school site has 2?
Yes.
1 night and 1 day?
Yes.
Minimum. And we used to have a guard at night. Then that we cut off, but then we brought it back as night custodian. Do they stay overnight? Or
No. Last year, we did go through a layoff process of the security guards. Fortunately, we had some custodial vacancies that they were able to take custodial positions, so they're actually custodians.
Oh, okay. So how many custodians do we have in total? Like 50 something.
Yeah, roughly
site.
52.
Okay.
60-ish.
Oh.
So Liang, is there a question? Okay.
Yeah.
So, are we ready to move on from this topic? Okay. Kristen, 1 minute. Kristen, did you have something?
Yes, so I know some of the school side, they do have local funds to support the technology. So have we ever considered running a community campaign, something like that, to support this? Maybe.
Yeah, and I think I'm betting we're going to talk about this moving forward, but just note that it doesn't help to not have ongoing money. For us to hire staff with one-time raised money, it gets us back in the same position we were in before, which is we're going to be deficit spending on something and making commitments. So if we can find something that is ongoing, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item. 1 second.
Sorry, this one here, right? 7.2.
Yeah, approval of new classified units. Okay. 7.2, the approval of noon aids. Do you have a presentation?
I don't have a presentation.
Okay.
This is really, we're just staying compliant with the law, and new AB
We saw.
670 came forward.
Okay, we
and so-
reviewed that. Okay. So what's the action? My computer.
Take a vote.
Yeah.
So can I move 7.2?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Angeline made the motion. Kristen second. All in favor. Thank you. Okay, I got it now. It's back up.
Is it?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so 7.3, discussion and approval of board bylaw 9123. Clerk, this one was pretty straightforward too. Do I have a motion?
I move 7.3.
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye. Okay, Kristen made the motion, Liang second. Everyone was in favor. Okay, this one requires a discussion. So this one, 7.4, CSB Delegate Assembly Election for Region 20. As Anjali pointed out, there's a mistake in the cover sheet where under background it says there are 6 vacancies in Region 20. There are 4 vacancies and 6 candidates.
Oh.
So we do need to choose. So what I was going to suggest is we are not under any obligation to choose. We can choose 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 0, whatever we want. So if anyone wants to advocate for any of these people, we can do it like that.
So I would like to
Yeah,
speak on this.
absolutely.
Because I am a delegate,
Yep.
and I also represent all of us on our Santa Clara County School Boards Association.
Yep.
And the incumbents are very active, and I would recommend that we vote for the incumbents and move them forward if we're going to take a vote. And if everyone's okay with that, I would like to make that motion.
So the incumbents are the ones with the star, Frank, Cynthia, Joe, and Jody?
Correct.
Okay. What about Liang and Kristen? Any?
I second.
Okay, so we vote on this.
Well,
right?
let's say,
Okay.
I mean, before a motion, if I could suggest for something like this, it's probably good to hear first if anybody had anybody else
Yeah.
they wanted.
Did
to-
anyone else want to put
I
forward?
don't think we can. Oh, yeah, we can do
No,
it.
no,
I'm
instead
saying,
of yours,
they
yeah,
might
like
not
if,
agree with
yeah,
the-
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well,
That's what I meant.
Originally, I was proposed to vote for incumbent as well.
Right, that's what and Liang, do you have anyone else on the list? Incumbents?
It's fine.
All right, so
Okay.
then I think it's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion on this one?
Yeah.
Okay,
To vote.
so do we have a motion?
I moved, and she seconded.
Oh, I didn't realize I was doing what you were saying, just seeing if people even
Well, it's about
wanted to
time.
say anything else. Okay, yeah. Finally, I did one thing you said. Okay, so Anjali moved, Kristen seconded, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Did you get all that, Renee? Okay, all right. Okay, 8.1 is an action item, approval of job description, Associate Superintendent of Educational Services. This is not a new thing, we've been talking about this for a while. Do we have any cards on this?
Because it's action, why don't you do a motion second, then we can
Okay,
talk.
okay.
No cards.
So do we have a motion?
I move.
Okay. Anyone second?
Second.
Kristen second?
I do have some questions, though.
Sure. So, Renee, we have a motion from Anjali, second from Kristen, and now we can have a discussion.
I just wanted to see how different is this, before we were calling it Associate Superintendent of Instruction Services. Now it's Education Services. I know you showed some stuff on the chart, but how different is it? And what are the benefits of going educational versus instructional?
Instruction is a broader term. I think it covers more the areas. We did embed some new responsibilities in there, and a big piece of it will be overseeing the pupil services with the special education. That will be a major task with that person taking on.
Stacy, you said instruction is broader, but you meant education is.
education.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think you meant, yeah.
So, but you're moving the assignment person out of there, right?
No, the student assignment person currently falls under our Leslie with our Chief Family and Engagement.
Oh,
That will
okay.
actually go under Jeff.
Okay.
And I fortified it a little bit around data analysis and because, really looking at data and focusing on things like that, I put a little bit more in this job description as well.
Or the education services?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes.
Do we have a comment?
No comment.
No comments, yeah,
No.
okay. Okay, board and superintendent activity, 9.1. Remember, we still have closed session after this, but I would love to hear your board and superintendent activity. Anyone?
I'll pass keeping the time in mind.
Okay. Leah?
Fine.
Yeah, Chris?
I have one.
Yeah.
So over the weekend, I took the Master in Governance 3 and 4, the school finance and the HR and collaborative bargaining, and I think it's very, very useful. So if our fellow board member didn't get a chance to take those class, I think it will help a lot for equip as a board member. So, yeah, just want to share that.
Thank you. And we have the CEF Gala coming up. Leslie, is it March 2nd, Saturday? What's the date? Yeah. So 3rd or 2nd? What? Third. So if everyone buys their ticket, I'll see you there. Okay, and I have nothing else right now. Craig? Okay, all right. So future agenda items. So we've had in June, we have a board advance in April, full day, and then in June, we have the superintendent evaluation on the full day, but I actually can't be there that day. So I spoke to Craig, and we're wondering if we can just put it into other closed sessions on other days instead of taking a full day, now that we've streamlined the process.
Do we want to wait until,
This
we are missing one board member, so can we talk about this at the next board
Maybe you can
meeting?
think about it. Just
Yeah, I was just gonna,
Maybe we'll-
if we're not going to,
Right.
then we'll, yeah. So, because we want to remove it from the calendar.
Well, I wouldn't remove it yet.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
it's
We'll
important.
talk about it
that-
at the next meeting, okay. We can't say too much under future agenda
Correct.
item, yeah.
And if I could, I will be out of town for the March 13 meeting. We're trying to keep it as light as possible of a meeting, but just know I won't be here for that one.
Okay, do we have any public comments on the closed session, Renee? Okay, so we are adjourned do I have to take the time? 9:20, we're returned from closed session. So I have some items to report. Number one, in closed session, the board voted 4-0 to enter into a settle agreement with the plaintiffs in Babin versus Apple Valley USD, San Francisco Superior Court number CPF 15514477. Under the agreement, the district will pay approximately $22,000 in attorney fees and keep the records of the number of minutes of PE provided in exchange for being dismissed from the lawsuit. Anjali moved, Kristen seconded. It was a 4-0 vote. Second item, settlement agreement for student number 213, 2018A. Kristen moved, Anjali second, 4-0 vote in favor of the settlement agreement. The next item is the board voted to, in closed session, the board voted 4-0 to release 62 temporary teachers at the conclusion of the 2017-18 school year. Anjali moved, Liang seconded, 4-0 vote.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
That for all this, Phyllis was absent.
Yeah,
so-
and Phyllis was absent on all of them. And there was nothing else to report from the closed session. And 9:21, the meeting is adjourned.